So there's a tragic story coming out of Texas, a mass shooting. And leftist researchers and the corporate press are running with this story that they've discovered the profile of this individual. And lo, this Mexican man is actually a white supremacist. Now, the thing is, it seems like researchers have dug through this profile. It does not seem to be real. This person was posting weird things in the past couple of weeks to no followers and to no one. But of course, the media is going to run with it. In this, there are, on this profile, there are posts about libs of TikTok, and I believe it's 4 clips from this show from one particular episode. That was enough for them to come out and, yeah, now Tim Pool is trending, and claim that this individual was a fan of this show. Yeah, I'm going to come out outright and just be like, you're liars. That's not the case. You don't get to say someone posted a clip one time and you're a fan, because by that metric, Media Matters is our biggest fan. Shout out to Media Matters for being huge fans of this show. But come on, that's ridiculous. And we all know it. I think the real issue here is a tragedy happened. And of course, once again, the left is trying to weaponize it for political points. We saw what happened in Nashville only a month or so ago, and it was a tragic story. They still have not released the manifesto, but it was really, really bad. The shooter was transgender. Many people had questions about what the motivations were, and we haven't gotten the manifesto. And all of a sudden, the next time you get some major tragedy, they discover this profile that just so happens to implicate those demanding the manifesto. The one thing I can say to all of this, I'm not going to do what PewDiePie did and come out and be like, oh, yeah, I'm so sorry, dude. We are one of the biggest podcasts in the world. I'm not trying to humble brag. We have one of the largest live audience on YouTube every night. So a lot of people watch the show, and not everybody who watches it likes the show. So y'all can go shove it. But I think you're full of it, and I quite literally don't care what the cult thinks anyway. We're just going to keep doing what we do. But we're going to talk about this story because it does involve us. And as I'm going through the news, there's my name trending alongside Libs of TikTok, who I think does very great and important work. So we'll talk about all of that. But my friends, before we do, head over to castbrew.com and pick up this delicious Rise with Roberto Jr. breakfast blend coffee. Castbrew.com. It's our coffee company. We're sponsoring ourselves. So every time you buy your coffee from Cast Brew, you're basically helping support our ventures. We've got Rise with Roberto Jr. We got Appalachian Nights. We also have a Colombian roast and a French roast. And with every purchase of Rise with Roberto Jr., you also receive a picture of Roberto Jr., our rooster, right there in the back of the bag. And I know that picture will inspire you and comfort you in your darkest of times. So castbrew.com if you want to support the show and pick up some coffee. And also head over to timcast.com, click that join us button, become a member, support the show directly, and you'll get access to our uncensored members only shows Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. We're going to have one of those up for you tonight. And you can get access to our Discord server, where you can actually submit questions and call into the show. So support our work, smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us today to talk about this and so much more is Kyle Seraphin.
Here I am.
Who are you? What do you do?
So I'm a former FBI agent. I say recovering FBI agent. It's actually a lot easier to explain to people. It's kind of like being an alcoholic when you're part of something that you didn't want to be part of, and maybe you can step away from that. I spent 6 years with the FBI and then another year unpaid where they claimed I was an employee, but they took my badge, they took my gun. I didn't have any responsibilities. I wasn't allowed to claim that I was an FBI employee, but they claimed it, which is an interesting kind of move. Sometimes when you work with the government, you get this very weird one-sided power relationship. But I started off as a whistleblower in 2021 in October. That doesn't usually go over very well. The first thing I did was expose something about the FBI going after parents at school board meetings.
Wow.
So once you start doing that, you might as well commit to it and go all the way. So we've exposed a bunch of stuff. I've worked with Project Veritas in the past. And then most recently, we exposed something about how the FBI was going to investigate radical traditional Catholics, which is always a good move because everyone knows there's nothing closer to a white supremacist than a person who likes the Latin Mass. So that was one of the games. And anyway, I just am a full-time sort of what do they call it? Anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremist. I think that's the way that they probably tagged me in their files. And
not a spying on you.
They got to be.
So when they claimed that parents were terrorists, that information came out because you blew the whistle.
Yeah, there were 2 of us. I don't know who the other person was. I was the first one that brought it to my congresswoman in New Mexico. And essentially, I read it, and there was this sort of backlash where they said, "Oh, we're not going to be investigating parents." It's like, well, it's actually called the Federal Bureau of Investigation for a reason. It's actually what they do. If you think that they just do intelligence things, it's because they're doing investigations. So that's how it started. And once you start down that road, you're probably not long for working for government agencies, but it turns out you also get to keep your integrity, which is helpful.
Right on, man. Thanks for hanging out. This should be interesting. We got Seamus Coughlin, dressed all nice.
Absolutely. And by the way, good for you, man. That's really incredible work. I'm glad you blew the whistle on that stuff, especially someone who goes to the Latin Mass and also someone who doesn't like what these groomer school boards are doing to kids and thinks that parents should be fully empowered to stand up to them. But my name is Seamus Coughlin. I create cartoons at a YouTube channel called Freedom Tunes, and I also have a podcast on Rumble called Shamer, if y'all want to check that out. I'm excited for tonight's show.
Hi, everybody. I am Phil Labonte, lead singer of All That Remains, anti-communist and counter-revolutionary. And this is my homie.
My name is Serge.com. I'm excited for this evening. It'll be fun to talk to you. Let's get started.
I think Ian got abducted. You know, he's just gone.
By like
We
aliens?
woke up and he wasn't here anymore.
Oh my God.
So, you know,
He's in there.
We got the
preparing
former
to take
FBI
off.
guy here.
I know nothing about nothing.
Coincidence?
Disavow all that.
All right, let's jump into this.
Not to my knowledge.
That's correct. It's an ongoing investigation that we can't make any comment about at this point.
Let's jump into this first story. We have this from NBC News. What we know about the slain Texas Mall massacre suspect, Mauricio Garcia. Garcia, who had a tactical vest, was armed with a rifle and a handgun. A senior law enforcement official said. Authorities said he was a suspected neo-Nazi sympathizer. Now, this story it's a tragedy. It's unfortunate. And we have, unfortunately, too many of these stories that end up happening in the media. Or I'm sorry, that end up happening and then end up hitting the media. So, I mean, the first thing I just want to say before we get into any of the politics from either side is, we don't want these things to happen. We want these things to stop. We need to figure out what the issue is in our society, in our culture. I genuinely believe it's disassociation. It is a dejected society where individuals don't know or care about each other, and they seek validation or they seek to push some extremist ideology. And then this whole thing creates a recipe for disaster. And I'll put it simply, I think it's multiculturalism. And not the idea that people of all different types are holding hands on the rainbow. It's that you have different communities stacked on top of each other and next to each other with wildly different views, and they don't like each other. And then people who are crazy will do crazy things. But what ends up happening today, we have this story from the Daily Mail. Revealed Texas gunmen staked out massacre mall to monitor peak times 3 weeks before killing 8 and posted details on Russian social media alongside photos of Nazis, guns, and ammunition. You see, here's where we get into the psy-op. No one knows if this Russian social media profile it actually belongs to this guy. A Bellingcat researcher named Eric Toller just said, I found this profile that looks like it's his. In fact, I'm pretty sure he even said, I didn't verify it. I don't know. Now, the photos that are coming out, I don't want to show many of them considering the sensitive nature of these things. They don't show his face. And Ian Miles Chong actually found that most of these photos are from 5 years ago on a random subreddit that were making fun of these people. So the whole story seems to be strange, but let's jump to this from Andy No. He says the brown face of white supremacy. A leftist Bellingcat writer has posted screenshots from the purported obscure Odnaklasniki social media profile of the Allen, Texas mass shooter, Mauricio Garcia. He's trying to link the shooter to Timcast and libs of TikTok. The account has photos of random Latino people wearing or posing in front of neo-Nazi symbols. Bellingcat is a government-funded site that was sourcing from intelligence agencies. It employs radical leftist writers. And then I think I've got, do I have Ian Miles Chong here? Ian Miles Chong says, posting on Blue Sky, Media Matters for America researcher Parker Malloy tells former Twitter trust and safety head Yoel Roth that not banning libs of TikTok may have caused the Allen, Texas mass shooting. Oh. And then we have this. That's why.
So stupid.
Now we know.
Well, this is the left's argument for everything now. Shut up or there will be more mass shootings. Don't state your point or there will be more mass shootings. That's their argument for everything.
That's all it is. The whole point is they want to connect anyone that would speak in a way that they do not approve of, and which is essentially they're in control of. They want to link them to any kind of bad thing that they can. I mean, you look at Timcast and, it was swatted 15 times last year here, and they're saying
plus bomb threats.
Yeah, and they're saying that Timcast is causing stochastic terrorism, even though they continue there's leftists that are constantly saying, "Oh, Timcast does this and they do this and blah blah blah." It's like It's literally the iron law of woke projection.
Can we change the name researcher to propagandist? Because I think it's more accurate and it feels more genuine. If we just
all it is.
Let's just call it what it is.
It's what they are.
You can't be a researcher for Bellingcat or Media Matters if you have an agenda.
If you're
pushing an agenda.
Yeah, if your whole job is to look for people that have a different political opinion and then cast them in the most negative light imaginable, you're not a journalist. You're not a researcher. You are a propagandist. So they're leftist propagandists. They're just commies. They're just commies.
I really just don't care because I think they've just lost. I feel nothing of this.
Well, they're at the ad hominem level, right? They're attacking you. They're saying you must be obviously affiliated with. I thought, by the way, the brown face of white supremacy was Larry Elder. I'm pretty sure we had
blackface.
Yeah.
Blackface. There's a big difference there. So this is the brown
error on your part, but it's okay. It's okay.
All right. Mea culpa.
Yeah.
End of the day, though, when they start getting into the ad hominem attacks, like they've already lost the argument. There is no fundamental argument against it. They're going to attack your character. They're going to attack your values, but it doesn't have anything to do with what. Like, did they make a strong point where they think this guy was somehow?
There was a
4
period
episodes?
where the media had enough influence to where I may have been concerned about this and then been like, oh, do I got to put out a statement? I remember when the New Zealand shooting happened and the guy said, subscribe to PewDiePie or whatever.
Right.
And then PewDiePie was all like, oh man, like, hey, look, and I'm kind of just like, shut up. I look at this and I'm like, shut your mouth, Bellingcat. You guys are fucking idiots.
Well,
you get me swearing. But like, it's a random profile from Russia. The credibility is almost nothing. And there's 4 clips from one show, one time. And so I just look at this and I'm like, let me tell y'all a story about when the Southern Poverty Law Center found a Holocaust denying conspiracy theory website from Iran that listed me as a speaker. I have never been to Iran, and then claimed that I was a speaker, and they had to retract and delete it and apologize because the best part was this. Me and a few other people threatened a lawsuit saying like, how could you just say this ridiculous fake garbage? And they knew. Typically when it comes to defamation lawsuits, they're really hard. Mm-hmm. But what they would have to say is either they knew it was fake or Southern Poverty Law Center believes that Holocaust denying conspiracy websites based in Iran that were previously deleted and then hosted as an archive are credible sources of information that they rely on. And I was like, I'd be willing to accept them winning the case if they state that publicly. That would be fantastic. If they come out and say, we do often find archives of conspiracy theory websites based in Iran and use that as relevant fact for our sourcing. So I look at this and I just say one thing. Wow, they must be really desperate. The transgender shooter in Nashville must have terrified them to the bone. Because the other day, when we were in Miami, I was hanging out at Hard Rock Seminole, and this is what people were talking about. You hear what just happened in Texas? And I was like, yeah. And then someone goes, and that Nashville thing with that transgendered person. And I'm like, uh-oh. When a regular dude who doesn't know a whole lot about anything is talking about that stuff, you can see exactly why they're freaking out.
Well, this is the apple of discord too, right? So it's that golden apple. It says to the fairest, it's just a shiny object. They toss it in the middle of the room. It doesn't have to have any meaning behind it other than whatever you ascribe to it. And people on the left have ascribed exactly what they want to feel. They fill in all the blanks. It doesn't matter that it's weak Russian. It doesn't matter that it's not backstopped. That's what we call that in the intelligence world. There's no backstop behind it, right? It doesn't go deep enough for there to be any kind of validity. And yet, it says what I want it to say.
Yeah.
It pegs my enemy in the way that I want it to peg them. So it's effective. And nobody looked into it any further because they don't care. They're not trying to find truth. What they're trying to find is, am I reaffirmed in my belief, whether it's that they hate you or that they hate, that it's obviously guns and white supremacy and all the other things that they're going to demonize. Just toss that shiny object in there.
I really do wonder, like, what is the end goal of trying to claim this guy was a fan of libs of TikTok or Timcast? It has nothing to do with us.
Why would
we get banned?
I know. I think it would be ridiculous for them to ban you, but that's the angle. But that's the angle that they're trying to go with. That's why they're talking about it. That's why your enemies are continually bringing this up and tweeting.
I disagree. I get your point, and maybe that's the intention, but it's just like there's literally nothing they can do. It doesn't work that way. With Alex Jones, they desperately try to find anything. And this was several years ago, but the media has lost so much power and influence they may as well be posting this. I mean, they're literally posting it on Blue Sky.
But they don't know it.
No, they're on Blue Sky. It's like, do you guys know what Blue Sky is?
No.
No, you never heard of it? Okay, well, you do, I do. But the average person's like, Tim, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is, correct me if I'm right, it's Jack Dorsey's new thing. Yeah, they're on some obscure website, spitting into the wind, and it's laughable.
But it got coverage in the Daily Mail.
They don't mention me or Libs of TikTok.
Okay. So the thing that's fun about it, I mean, obviously they're trying to accomplish an agenda, and they also haven't realized that they've lost all their capital. Yep. So they're spending money that has no value, right?
Exactly.
They're out there spending this. They're attempting to do something with this sort of website, with this sort of story, but it doesn't get any traction. But it used to, and they're doing the same thing. It's like a toddler that's still throwing tantrums when you know that they're not going to pass out. They're not going to die if they pass out. So you're letting them pass out. So now they're throwing the tantrums, and those tantrums come out exactly what you'd expect. It's like, we're just going to watch you until you stop. There's no outcome to this that's going to be beneficial. So
Exactly.
But who cares? Like, let them tire themselves out.
I got some direct messages from people, and they were like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And I was like, I always tell people, don't send me stuff when people like I've got so many people saying so much stupid crap about me all day, every day. I literally just don't care. You know, today, what are we doing? I'm having some sea bass for dinner, complaining on the internet. That's about it. This is meaningless. It's unfortunate what happened in Texas, but the left is looking for any kind of political angle. You take a look at what happened after Nashville. They claimed the trans person was one of the victims.
Exactly.
They're trying desperately to spin this. So you want to bring this stuff up? I will dedicate a whole segment to the Nashville. You know what? Let's do it.
Here it comes.
You know,
you ask for it, you get it.
you get what you ask for, my friends. Hey, let's jump to this next story from the Daily Mail. National Police Association sues to make trans Nashville school shooter Audrey Hale's manifesto public days after cops said they were pausing plans to release it due to pending litigation. The National Police Association filed the suit on April 28th for the release of the Audrey Hale's penned manifesto. Calls for the release of Hale's manuscript have grown since Hale opened fire on the Covenant School in Nashville. So here we have a story about a transgender woman who killed 3 children and faculty members, and we still don't know the official reason. But how funny is it that a day after what happens in Texas, researchers funded by and supported by intelligence agencies just happened to have found an obscure Russian social media profile,
of course it's Russian,
that was posting to no one with no followers. Yeah, sorry, I'm not going to buy it. But look, if regular people want to believe this stuff, I don't care.
It's true. It's not like it was his Facebook page. It's not like it was his Twitter account. It's not like he had some YouTube page with a ton of stuff on it. I think that I read that there is a YouTube page, but it wasn't extensive. So the whole idea that there's this long history of him watching these things and blah, blah, blah. These are very, very superficial and only surface level connections, and they're doing everything they can to make it, about
it's the spaghetti technique.
Exactly.
Yes.
You throw it against the wall, you
Whatever
see what
sticks,
sticks,
yeah.
and none of this is going to stick because it's weak. And like I said, it's not backstop, it's not shorts. What's interesting too is, look, National Police Association is the one suing for it.
Yeah.
And I don't claim to speak for all law enforcement, but I know enough people that work in the law enforcement world. That's the background that I came out of. And I've got buddies who are former cops. I got buddies that are former federal agents. They all want this thing public. There's no excuse for not exposing it. And so generally speaking, people, and that's the nice thing about this story, is that you see there is someone from the National Police Association putting money behind a lawsuit saying we are trying to get this thing out. I guarantee you the people that work for Nashville PD want it out too. They want to, because their officers responded in a flawless way. Technically, like outstanding response to what happened, right? They went out there and they solved the problem in a way that, and when you look at those guys, like they were not gung-ho about being that wasn't the day they planned. The guy even gave his press conference. I thought it was really emotional, but they want this thing out too, because they want to say, look, this is evil in the world. We're calling it out. That's what you sign up to do as a cop.
This is a good example of the big problem of our attention spans in society, in that when the cops do a bad job, they get all the attention in the world. When it comes to Uvalde, there's story, nonstop questions. Why did this happen? How did this happen? And we don't give enough attention or gratitude to the officers who do the job right. As tragic as it is.
Yep.
But they rush in. That body camera footage of what happened, it's it's crazy.
It's going to be taught in tactical. So the actual techniques are called alert. That's the training that people go through. It's a law enforcement standard across the country. It comes out of Texas State University in San Marcos. Put out this thing after Columbine because they said we got to standardize the idea that we're going to have cops going into these scenarios and they're going to do it the right way. So they wrote the book on it. I have the book actually in my garage, and they teach it at multiple different levels. These guys executed a masterclass in that because you never know all the information. They got keys to the doors. That's a huge, just a heads up move. They rolled in. They had comms. They had one guy that was driving everything. They had another guy that was doing. People get task saturated. They go into a room and they just all they can pay attention to is staying alive because there's a potential shooter behind every door. And they went right to that threat as soon as they heard something. They changed tactics. I mean, these guys crushed it, and they should be the focus. They should be at the White House.
Yep.
Honestly,
yes,
because we had losers show up at the White House and get medals for, medals of freedom. These guys did the thing. I did a whole show on this called the Super Bowl of Masculinity, but it's essentially like, imagine you woke up in the morning, you put on your pants like you normally do, you went and you started your car, you had your coffee, you went to go do your thing, and suddenly it's like, today is your day to be a man at the highest level that you can be a man. You are going to save children and put your life on the line right now, and no one's giving you any warning. You're getting tapped from nowhere to step into the Super Bowl and throw a touchdown pass. And those guys completed the pass. They crushed it.
And everyone now knows you'll get limited gratitude.
That's right.
Limited. They won't give you a week of airtime like they give the bad cops. You will not be invited to the White House.
No book deal.
No book deal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's human nature, right? Good things just happen. Bad things are somebody's fault.
That's intense.
Yeah.
That's really sobering, and honestly, it's really sad too.
Yeah.
Because that is there was a time when we did celebrate heroes that did heroic things. This country used to understand that, and now it's about the media cycle, which generates clicks and then likes, and
It's got to be rage based.
Not only
it is.
I think there's an argument to be made that on the left there was more celebration of the shooter than there was of the police officers who went in there and took them out.
100.
So you saw those left-wing protesters going, there were 7 victims here. Unbelievably insane. And then you also had the media going out and engaging in not only apologetics for the left-wing narrative, but essentially for the act of violence that took place if it was motivated by left-wing ideology. Imagine, right? Imagine we had nailed down conclusive proof that the reason that this maniac committed this recent shooting was because he was a white supremacist and he did this because he believed there was a white genocide, et cetera, et cetera. Imagine if when the media was talking about it, they followed up the story of the event with, but white people are having their rights taken away, and there is an effort to import other people to replace them.
And they claimed he was a victim.
and this shooter was a victim. But that is literally exactly what happened. I know. And so it makes it even more insane, but that is literally exactly what happened when this trans person shot a bunch of children. All the stories were, now we should remind you that trans rights are under threat in this country. There is really a trans genocide, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, on that last point, I think there is.
Well, the left, because the left is sterilizing them.
Right, we talked about that with
Yeah.
Lance. We talked about the left like say there's a trans genocide, and I'm like, well, I agree. I think it's when you sterilize trans people, it's prevent them from reproducing. I seriously think so. I mean, it's terrifying.
Well, yeah.
I would prefer it if they would stop, but
it's right out of Rules for Radicals, though, right? Accuse your opponent of what you're doing. They accuse us of being genocidal for saying don't sterilize kids, and people believe it.
It's ridiculous.
Well, so do you guys think we'll get the manifesto? The police have already intimated this was, I think they already said it was politically motivated by resentment. And the rumors I've heard from various sources is that it seems to explicitly reference conservatives trying to restrict child sex change surgery.
I've heard the same.
And I will say, whether this comes out or not could be dependent on whether there are people in the intelligence agencies who are willing to blow the whistle like you did.
Yes, and if it's actually, first of all, somebody read this that was picking up, this was going to be a frontline cop. This is somebody who was conducting the search warrant at the house, that was conducting the search of the premises, that booked it into evidence. This thing had some eyes on it, right? That's why we're getting some of the information we're getting. So some of those people, the sad thing is this. Our country used to celebrate a look behind the curtain, a look into sort of like what the government is up to when they're keeping it from us. That's what the New York Times used to do, that sort of thing. Classified documents being leaked, that was a celebration on behalf of the media because they said, we're going to hold the powerful to account And journalism used to be a blue collar endeavor. And now what we see is they defend whatever that narrative is on the behalf of the government. We were talking before we started, but it's like, when did the kids stop being so punk rock?
Yeah.
Like the whole game used to be that whatever the man wants, I'm going to do the opposite, even if it's dumb for me. The kids are not doing that anymore.
The band The Offspring has a song on their first album that I cannot say the name of. If I say the name of one of the songs on their first album, and anybody can Google it, it would likely result in some men in suits knocking on my door the next day. Let me just put it that way. The name of the song is a direct threat on government officials, instructing people to do a thing. And they had that song available, I think, for like 10 or 12 years until
I had it on cassette.
The song?
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. You probably did.
I had the first album on cassette.
And then you definitely did. And this was punk rock. And then they got famous and rich, and now their guitar player has me blocked on Twitter. Talk about like just a crazy.
Well, even the idea.
It's not punk.
It's not punk.
You know.
Well, I think Gavin McInnes said it. He said the most punk rock thing in the world you could do right now is like marry somebody of the opposite sex and then go make some babies and take them to church and raise, human beings that pay taxes. Like that's punk rock right now.
It's funny because it's true.
That's what my wife and I are doing. It's the funniest thing you can imagine. But you look over and there's memes too where they say like what you thought the resistance and the rebellion was going to look like, what it actually looks like, right? Yeah. And what you thought it looked like was like people burning stuff in the streets and having the zombie apocalypse, fight back.
Yeah.
And what it looks like is like people homesteading and growing a garden, having their own animals like you guys do here. Yeah. So a lot of that is, the resistance is not what people think it is, but that's because kids stop being punk rock. They stop looking to resist whatever the mainstream is. And we were talking about bootlickers. It's the same thing. It's like, apparently that's a virtue now.
Well, it's also funny because like 99% of the people who will call you a bootlicker like want higher taxes and to live in a pod and eat bugs.
Yeah, govern me harder, right?
Like, yeah, exactly. It's remarkable how quickly it changes. Even up until 2021, the idea of revolution or revolt or insurrection were celebrated. I remember during the George Floyd BLM riots, there were left-wingers posting online, hey, conservatives who claim you care about the Second Amendment, now would be a good time to rise up against the government since they're violating our human rights. And then January comes around, oh my goodness, we're in a country full of insurrectionists. How could the right wing try? And of course, we all know J6 wasn't an insurrection. It's all nonsense, but the point still stands because they labeled it an insurrection. Now insurrection is a no-no. But they were literally fans of it when people were burning down cities. When the White House was surrounded and the barricades were broken down and they forced the government, the president into the bunker.
And the Gravel Institute tweeted that they thought it was good that it happened, but it was just the wrong people.
Herbert Marcuse.
Yep.
It's all Herbert. It's all standard leftist tactics. We talk about this stuff all the time, and
but they're not changing their mind.
No, they're not, and they're not going to change because
and
this is a tactic that works.
So here's the thing. I was in Portland when they had the riots. I did an undercover surveillance mission there for about 2 weeks, which was interesting and spicy. There were things that were pretty rowdy. I watched a 7-Eleven get taken over. That was really weird. There were dudes on the top of the 7-Eleven across from the Portland Police Bureau's Union Hall, which is like their, wherever their union meets. And they were throwing fireworks off there, explosive devices that could have done real damage. And at the same time, I was also outside of Lafayette Square the day after they burned it. And they burned St. John's Church. We were standing there toe to toe with Secret Service guys who had caught bricks in the head, and nobody seemed to be upset about it. And then the other crazy thing that you'd see was these and it's always these lib leftist women, which are ubiquitous in DC. They were bringing snacks for the protesters. So they're bringing like bags of granola bars and stuff to fuel the rioters later on that night. And they're putting them on top of piles of bricks. And I'm like, one, why are there loose bricks here on the street? This seems like a security problem. We're going to solve that. Also, what are you trying to do? Because I guarantee if you had done something like that for January 6th, let's say you were running like a riot ribs outside of the January 6th, the protest, you would be hit with like some sort of like providing material support to terrorism. I guarantee it. You would have a 266 case on you from the FBI, and they'd be banging on your door to take your rib smoker. Yeah,
and most of the people who got your ribs have probably been feds too. This is for feeding government workers without a permit.
Disavow.
It's infuriating, but at the same time, getting upset and sitting there complaining about the hypocrisy is absolutely counterproductive. It's really a better position to just expect it and try to anticipate what their stories are going to be and just go about your day and make sure that you have some kind of some kind of response, but for the most part, it's just like, look, they're gonna say that stuff, and you have to continue going about your day and doing what you're doing, because they're gonna call you names. They're gonna try and lay everything on you. That's the leftist tactic: is blame the other person for the things that they're doing. Do as much as they can to discredit you in front of other people, so that way people
and they
don't
throw them
listen.
out without they don't care if there's any background to it. I got a
doesn't
letter
matter.
from the FBI in February stating that I was racist, sexist, and or with a slash homophobic during the 6 weeks I was in the office when I didn't talk to anybody in May and April. Is that right? No, March and April of last year. And I didn't talk to anybody. I sat there and I'm like, and or like, which one of these was I? Is there any story? Is there any background? Is there substance? And this is a legitimate, government agency, semi-legitimate at least, nominally a constitutional group that theoretically would have to put some information behind it. They put that out there, and so I shared it on Twitter because I don't care. Like, I just think it's funny. So and people go, "Hey, you're really slacking off. You could have been transphobic and xenophobic, and you missed the boat." And it's like, I obviously did. If you didn't get enough of these, if you're not getting enough insults lobbed your way, you're not actually doing the job.
Let's jump to this next story. We have this from the Post-Millennial. Breaking full footage reveals former Marine Daniel Penny putting Jordan Neely in recovery position. Passengers complimenting him. Let me just put this in simple terms for all of you. The story of the violent homeless man who was threatening to hurt everyone, who said he didn't care if he'd go to jail, who was subdued by 3 men. He died. The left has called for this former Marine's criminal prosecution and indictment, and AOC has referred to it as a murder. And as it turns out, new footage proves that this Marine was actually attempting to save the life of this man. Of course, I don't think AOC cares, because I think she's maliciously evil, and that what these people truly want is anarcho-tyranny. Mm-hmm. If you're a criminal, you get all of the defense in the world. And if you are the innocent civilian trying to live your life, they will beat you down and blame you for everything. So the story here, I suppose, really interesting is that the reason this video wasn't discovered immediately was because it was taken by an individual who doesn't speak English as their first language. And so it was uploaded in Spanish. And it was then found on a Spanish language Facebook post and then uploaded, thus debunking the whole narrative. Surprise, surprise. Another Covington scenario. The left goes nuts, calls for blood. And then the video surfaces later, proving this guy actually was trying to save this dude.
There was no question about, like, he wasn't trying to kill the guy. He was trying to prevent him from hurting other people, and it sucks that he died. But it's not like, and it's probably incompetence or whatever, fine. But he wasn't intentionally trying to kill the man.
But he doesn't have the standard that law enforcement would have to execute a move like this, right?
Not.
Because he's a civilian bystander that has no specialized training in that. Now, he has combatives training. He was a Marine. He knows how to do a chokehold. But if you were going to do this thing properly, you'd probably do what's called a carotid restraint, a blood choke, right? You want to get the blood stopping, and you don't want to stop the breathing. So he could have done something. He did an air choke, it sounds like. But you could see his elbow probably was a little bit too, it needs to be centered on there. End of the day, it doesn't matter.
In this video,
the guy was still breathing.
The guy was still breathing, still moving, and still trying to get up.
And they put him in the recovery position. I teach emergency medicine. I used to teach it even at the FBI's academy. I've been a paramedic for over a decade. And so basic hands-on medicine, you can do it with almost nothing. And what he did there is textbook excellence for a bystander. You can save people's lives by putting them in a place where their trachea is going to be open, that they can actually get air. He put them in that left lateral recumbent position, which is what you do when people are knocked out, unconscious. You can do it to drunks.
There's a story from a year ago where a homeless, belligerent man walked up to a woman who was standing on the subway and shoved her right in front of the train as it was coming, killing her. And there were 25 or so incidents last year of that happening. So imagine you're on the train and you keep hearing about violent homeless people murdering people. Or you've heard a couple times and you've heard about 25 people they tried to kill. Then someone gets in your train, you're trapped, your train's moving, and they say they're going to hurt somebody and they don't care if they go to jail. 3 people who live in New York thought it would be reasonable to attempt to subdue this man. I'm not going to then put the responsibility on the Marine trying to stop a violent criminal. I mean, he was arrested 40 times. He kidnapped a kid before he punched him in the face.
Yep, accurate.
If he doesn't know how to do anything other than what he did, it's not his fault. I don't blame the victims of the crime for doing whatever they can to try and stop themselves from being victims.
Well, exactly. I mean, so whenever a senseless act of violence occurs, the left has an inexhaustible list of excuses for the person who went out and blatantly committed an unjustifiable act of violence. But when someone defends themselves, well, now they're evil incarnate. Now we're not going to examine the situation. We're not going to give them the luxury of analyzing every socioeconomic factor that could have led to them being in that situation. We're not going to say they did it because there wasn't enough funding given to their school library, and they would have been an upstanding member of society who never did anything wrong if the situation had been different. It's simply that person is evil incarnate, and we have to lock them up and throw away the key. Now we're very tough on crime.
Imagine if instead of coming out and saying, why aren't they giving mental health treatments to these poor homeless men? It's like, okay, well, he was violent. What if they came out and said, why aren't they giving proper self-defense training to our Marines who could have done a proper restraint that would not have harmed this man? Oh, there's a bunch of different ways you can pretend to be outraged.
That's right.
I'll tell you where my outrage is. It is the city is lax on crime and allows these people to roam free. They are struggling to maintain their system at all. We have leftists saying that Rikers, people die there, that people are unjustly held there. And I'm like, your city is broken. Period. Your policies don't work. Your politicians don't work. Yet every time you Democrats who run New York City screw up, you complain about some other. Let me tell you where it comes from. All of these problems we hear about in the culture war, police brutality. Let's talk about that. They're in Democrat cities. You don't hear. Name one of these stories, and it is in a Democrat-run jurisdiction.
Yep,
Of course.
Almost entirely, not all of them, but almost exclusively. And their complaining is, it's just meaningless completely.
Think about this, though. There's two phases that they screwed it up. Number one, they're not giving these guys enough training. I'm talking about the cops right now. They're not giving them the training, which is money. So they're defunding. They're taking money out of the budgets of these different law enforcement areas. The second thing is they're not backing their play. When you're a cop on the street, and I've talked to lots of cops. I spent a bunch of time dealing with them in my old job. They're out there and they know they are not being supported by the apparatus there. So if they have to use deadly force, if they have to use any justifiable force, they're probably going to be facing charges. And there's no joy. Like, they're not going to be qualified immunity. They're not going to be scoped. They're not going to have defense that's paid for by the local jurisdiction. It's going to come out of their pocket, or it's going to come out of the union. They're going to get crushed. So they do the what do they call the Ferguson effect, the Freddie Gray effect. They scale back and they let this thing happen. And that's how you get a crazy man threatening to kill people on a subway when somebody saw him. I guarantee you he went by cops that day.
This is what community policing looks like. Right? When the community is doing the policing, that's what you get. You get because, and I said that on Twitter the other day, and some leftists got all up in my mentions and had a problem and is like, oh, there's all these books and that's not how it works, and etc. But what they're neglecting to address is that when you say community policing on the internet to the vast majority of the population, you're going to have a significant portion of unsophisticated people that are going to hear that and they're going to think, I have to take care of myself. It's my job to help. Now, whether or not that's the case, it doesn't matter. People are going to think that and they're going to act like that. And that's what you get. That's all that you get. You're going to get more of this. The fewer cops you have, the fewer security or the less security you have on the subway system, the more you're going to get this. So this is 100% AOC's fault. This is Rashida Tlaib's fault. This is Ayanna Pressley's fault. The squad, they're all guilty. All of the Democrats that have been screaming,
take the mayor too. Add the mayor in there.
The mayor? Yeah, well, no, the mayor's actually kind of good. I think he was complaining, but it's the DA's fault. It's the vice president's fault for bailing out people when they were rioting in 2020. It is 100% the Democrats' fault. Down the line, they were calling for this. The blood is on their hands, and for them to even try to blame the poor guy that was trying to help the poor people on the subway is absolutely absurd and should not even be tolerated by reasonable people.
So who here thinks this guy is going to be indicted and convicted? I say yes. I think they're going to criminally indict him, and then they're going to convict him, and they're going to get him on some charge where they're like, we understand that there was some fear here, but he went too far, and just because you're scared does not give you the right to kill. So, negligent homicide or something.
Yeah, there's a reasonableness standard. They can indict him. That's a no-brainer. Okay, so we can just throw that. That's going to happen for sure. There's demand for it, so there will be a supply for it. They will make that happen. What you do have is a lot of people that ride the subway that can make on a jury. There's a lot of people who have seen that situation, and the question is this: are they going to believe their own lying eyes on what they've seen and experienced and the fear that they've maybe had and the internet videos they've shared with their friends, or are they going to go with what their party tells them they're supposed to do? Because New York City is not universally. It's like 70%.
They're going to go with what their party tells them to do. You know why? Because they're going.
You only need one juror.
They're going to be escorted into the courthouse by armed police with rifles as violent rioters scream threats at them, and then go to their homes. And what was it? What trial was it where one of the witnesses or whatever had a pig's head put on their porch and the blood splattered on it, but it was like the wrong house or something like that?
I don't know.
In Minnesota.
Yeah, it was the one in Minnesota.
Oh, this was the show, like the Chauvin trial or
In
something?
Minnesota, you have armed police with rifles, long guns, standing outside escorting in the jury,
Yep.
looking at all of the chaos and violence. The message is clear. It doesn't matter what you think is right. The far left is firebombing buildings, and they will come after you. So if this guy gets indicted, I really don't see someone in New York being like, I will accept the consequences in a city surrounded by far left extremists.
What if
they're
they,
gonna
change venue? What if they're able to get the venue outside of New York
They won't
City?
do it. Look at Minnesota.
They can appeal. I mean, they can make that request.
And the judge, it'll get denied. They'll say, this is what happened in Minnesota. They said there's no jurisdiction in Minnesota where people don't know what happened. Now, my response to that is then case dismissed, because the Constitution warrants a fair trial. And if you're saying outright everyone is biased, then you cannot try this man. Sorry, he's free to go. They didn't do that. They just said, no, you're going to get a biased trial and then we're going to lock you up. Sorry, have a nice day. I just, look, there's a possibility this guy
I hope
gets
for all
acquitted.
that, and the other piece is it has to be up in front and center that this guy, what he did was appropriate, and using your voice the way you're doing it is actually really important, because otherwise this guy gets steamrolled. He has no chance. I do agree with you that there's a very high probability. The other thing is, Phil, what you were saying earlier, community policing and the nature of it. The Supreme Court has already ruled on that, by the way. They've said that the police do not owe you personally a duty to safety.
Right.
So they have no duty to act on your behalf. They owe the public a duty, but that's a very nebulous concept. It's vague and it's open. So individually, you can be screwed.
Yeah.
So you may have to defend yourself. And I know you guys had Mike Glover on here before. He says something, be your own first responder.
Yeah.
That's something I think is an incredibly important message right now. And we're living in it. In some places you can do that and you'll be able to survive. You do it in New York City, you're probably going to go to jail, unfortunately, even if it was correct.
Carry a gun. If you legally,
That's what
not
I do.
in New York.
Hey,
I'm not
that's what I
saying
do.
But I mean,
Where legally allowed, which leads us to the larger question of, or the larger statement, the better piece of advice, live in constitutional carry states.
Yes.
Because if you're in New York, I mean, look at this. 3 people on this train thought what this guy was doing warranted restraint. 3 people. So if you come to me and say, what makes you think it was reasonable? Oh, I don't, but 3 people did.
Right.
3 people held this guy down. You can't defend yourself in these places.
No.
And look, I mentioned this about New Jersey. I was told that if I was in New Jersey in my own home and someone broke in with the intent to kill and I shot them, they said, yes, you have a right to defend yourself. You will be arrested, charged with murder. You will spend time in prison, awaiting or jail, depending on how Jersey handles it. And then you can assert your affirmative defense to the judge that it was self-defense. That's New Jersey.
Is New Jersey duty to retreat within your own home?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They call it partial castle doctrine.
It's insanity.
You're only allowed to use force to defend your home if you have no way out. But they also say, so I asked them, they said a window is a way out. And they gave me the Gulag Archipelago response of just run away. If someone
So
breaks
like if your wife and children are on the 2nd floor, you have a duty to
Leave
run
them.
out the 1st floor and leave them there.
They expect you to leave them.
So I was told yes.
Wow.
But it does really depend on the judge you get. There are
But the idea that that's even up to a judge, right, is insane.
The
Complete moral insanity.
I mean, but it's up to a judge everywhere. And even in West Virginia, there's like some reasonableness standard to whether or not, if somebody's walking on your property, you can't just kill them. You know what I mean? If someone's running towards your home, screaming with bloody rage, holding a weapon, I'm pretty sure in West Virginia you can. West Virginia's got some of them. So West Virginia, I'm pretty sure you can defend your physical property, like your fields. And this has a lot to do with the fact that it's a rural country where there's a lot of acreage and people farm. Whereas in Maryland, you can defend your house only after going inside of it. And the idea is you might be out with your family in the field doing work when someone threatens you and you can use force to defend yourself. In Maryland, property tends to be a lot smaller. So they say, if you are outside your home and someone is threatening you, you have a duty to go into your home. If you are in your home and they attempt to break into your home, I believe West Virginia, I believe Maryland allows the use of lethal force to prevent someone from breaking into your home. And then in New Jersey, you better jump out that window and go run buck naked through the woods.
You got to do what they call the dynamic PLF, going out the window, the parachute landing fall, and keep your feet and knees together and try to make it out the second
I asked
floor.
the cop, I said, where do I go? Where do I go? It's my house.
Yeah.
And the response, the cops were like kind of based. They were like, no, we get it. But what they'll tell you is that proves you're a murderer, because what you're basically saying is you had a choice to make between standing outside or killing a person, and you made the choice to kill a person. That is not reasonable. That's their view in New Jersey.
Well, and the rest of America looks at it and says, you value your stuff more than you value somebody else's life. And it's like, well, they value my stuff more than they value their own life. Obviously, they came into my house. That's how it works in Texas. When I was actually going through, so before I was a law enforcement officer, I was a concealed carrier. I carried like everybody else, and I had a permit because Texas is very newly come into this sort of constitutional carry game. Yeah. And when I went through those courses, one of the things that was kind of interesting is the guy said, not only can you defend yourself in almost any situation that you're in, you have no duty to retreat, but there is actually a deadly force scenario where someone is stealing your stuff in aid of nighttime mischief. And that was the way the code was written. Now, this goes back to maybe 2013 or 2014. So I don't know if it still stands in Texas, but legitimately, if someone stole your car stereo and was running down the street, you theoretically, although I don't recommend it, could shoot them in the back in Texas.
I'm pretty sure.
You don't want to do that in Austin, but if you did it in like Odessa, you might be okay, kind of thing. Like you don't want to do it in big cities, but I'm just saying, like theoretically, that was underneath the actual statutory law. That was a defense.
Sure.
Once again, I don't care if you steal my car stereo. I'm not going to shoot you in the back. That seems ridiculous to me. Yeah. But if you present an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury while you are doing something like that, which they call nighttime mischief, which could just be sneaking around your property, then your standard is actually, you meet the standard. And so there are reasons to use deadly force in that, or I
Googled it real quick, and apparently the answer is simply put yes. You can, but it says it's not, this lawyer says it's not been used effectively in practice.
That checks.
Because most people are going to be like, are you nuts?
Well, there's a standard of it too, right? Like that's the other thing you find about people that carry concealed weapons, and all of you out there that do that sort of thing know it as well. There's a standard of, is it a judicious use of your force? Do you really want to go through whatever that experience is? Because you're probably going to get arrested if you shoot somebody in the back running with your stereo.
I mean,
even if you are right.
Yeah, I mean, you know this, but for the listeners out there, the things that you need to legitimize, not legalize, but to legitimize, because jurisdictions change, but you need to have ability, opportunity, and intent, right? To someone has to have the ability to harm you, they have to have the opportunity, and they have to have the intent. They have to make it clear to you that they're going to, they have to be in the same room, and they have to have some way to do it.
Some of it is reasonable too, because there's some of those things you can't actually... You can't look at somebody in the dark and know what's coming on.
Sure.
I would assume that if you come into my house at 3 a.m. and I'm sleeping and there's a flashlight and and you have hands, which you do because you opened up my door, then you have some negative intent because people sleep in their houses at 3 a.m.
Yeah, but
so you're expecting something.
The point that I'm making is just those three things have to actually all happen for it to be a legitimate use of force to defend your life. And if you don't have those, then you don't do it. So if a guy's running away, don't, because you're going to get yourself in trouble.
There's no upside to it, but there is. No. So there actually is a federal standard that we would always play by. And I think it actually works well for people, even outside of a law enforcement capacity. It's essentially this. It's very, very simple. If a person is basically threatening imminent danger means right now. That's not a future action. That's not like Ashley Babbitt could have become a problem. I mean, like right now, there is a problem with this person. And if you're going to say that person presents an imminent danger of death or serious physical injury, which is a little vague, but we know that a physical injury can happen that can be serious and some are not. So that's core stuff. Imminent physical danger, death or serious physical injury to yourself or to another person that you're responsible for, that's a deadly force scenario. You can actually go for it.
This is what the Texas.gov sent me to. It says, so when can you use deadly force in Texas to protect property? Texas law allows you to use deadly force to protect property if you would be justified in using force and you reasonably believe it is immediately necessary to prevent the imminent commission of specific enumerated property crimes. These are arson, burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, theft during the nighttime, or criminal mischief during the nighttime.
Yep.
So it does say specifically, if you see someone trying to steal property from you and then you shoot them, that's a serious felony. If they turn towards you, that changes everything. So it's... And I also kind of think like...
Just nighttime mischief in general is my favorite thing to be in a criminal statute.
Mischief during the nighttime.
I just like nighttime mischief. I just think that...
but it does...
We probably all got involved in nighttime mischief when we were kids. So that's also terrifying because I grew up in Texas.
But I think the reason for these laws in places like Texas is they typically want you to be able to defend yourself from crime, but they don't want people to randomly shoot people. So like, I was talking to someone out in West Virginia and I said, what if someone enters my property in West Virginia? Can I defend it? And I think I was talking to a cop, actually. He said, if someone just is walking on your land, you can't just shoot them because people accidentally walk on land a lot. However, legally, you can defend your property from someone who is committing a crime and enters the property. So, basically, you need to be able to justify why you thought they were committing a crime or something like that, despite the fact that it's kind of more vague than that.
If you can articulate the reasons, and those reasons would be justifiable, and that's very subjective, the way you articulate it. They always say this in government service. It's like, it's not what you did, it's how you write it up.
Yeah.
Okay. And the military is very familiar with this too. It's the way you get awards and certain commendations. If you justify it, if it's articulated properly, then you can have a lot of things happen in your favor, and vice versa too. Somebody could articulate that you were doing something that was totally justifiable. They can articulate it in a bad way. And then
here's the important thing too. It says the jury must decide whether you had a reasonable belief that deadly force was immediately necessary to prevent a perpetrator from fleeing.
Yep.
I wonder, it says immediately after committing a burglary, robbery, aggravated robbery, or theft during the nighttime.
That says to stop them from fleeing.
Right.
That's kind of intense. So that's Texas for you.
You have to give a reasonable belief that deadly force was necessary. What if the only weapon available to you is a 9mm?
Then you need to upgrade your arsenal.
No. This might actually clear you.
Yeah, if that's all you have on you. And the question is,
if the only use of force you have is considered deadly, and you have no other alternatives or options, is that considered reasonable? That's
I mean, that's the fun, and obviously it goes to a jury too. The other piece of this is, do people run around with restraints? Do you keep flex cuffs with you? Are you keeping shoestring restraints? Because that's actually the tool that should have happened in the New York subway system, right? Because the guy did something. If you could immediately incapacitate him, and a blood choke would have been appropriate, he's out for a few seconds. You zip tie up his hands real quick, and and you can carry those things around with you. Tourniquets might be a little bit more difficult to secure properly.
Yeah, but it's better than nothing.
I'm just saying, people don't run around with duct tape. They don't run around with flex cuffs. They don't run around with what they call like shoestring handcuffs, which I used to keep in my pockets all the time because they're really effective. But if you don't have that thing, and most people don't, then you're stuck holding this guy until the next stop. You're on the F line until you get to the platform, I guess. And that's the scary thing for these people. So, tying it back in there, the reasonable standard is like, what are they going to do? Let him get up and be pissed? I don't know if you've ever let somebody up after they've had that sort of experience. They don't generally go like, I'm de-escalated.
Yeah, once you grab him, that's it. You're locked in until the police come.
That's correct.
that guy didn't have a chance, like an opportunity or the option. Like if they let him go, he was already having an episode. You're not going to let the guy. He's not going to be like, nah, it's cool, man. I'm gonna chill now. No, he'd have flipped out. There's no question about it. And it's you don't risk it. Even if maybe he wouldn't have, you don't risk it because he gets up and next thing you know, he's on someone else,
Yeah, so we've talked about this before. I even mentioned it earlier on the show, but just the propensity of left-wingers to project. Often what they will accuse conservatives of who act in defense of themselves or others as having a misinformed view of violence based on watching action movies. Oh, you only want guns because you think you're some kind of action hero. Oh, you're only trying to save the damsel in distress because you saw it in a film. In reality, their understanding of how using force works is entirely Hollywood based, right? Like they really think you can have a fight with somebody the way they do in a Marvel movie or in a choreographed fight scene where you're like just standing apart, like boxing each other, and then you get the bad guy down and then you say, stay there, fella, and he stays down without getting back up. I mean, in real life, self-defense situations are incredibly messy. They're incredibly messy, but because people are used to seeing these choreographed fight scenes in Hollywood movies where the good guy subdues the bad guy without hurting him, they think that your average person should be able to do that.
Seamus, I've seen the movies where Black Widow trips a guy and he falls down and just doesn't get back up.
Exactly.
There's no way they just made that up.
How about the magic hit where they like hit you with either like their fist or they hit you with the gun, like they pistol whip you and then you're out for however long you need to the scene ends? That's my other favorite thing. Those are almost always either lethal if you were to actually hit that one hit, or that person's going to get up and they are going to be resuming their fighting posture because they are now in a very dangerous spot.
I love this. Like, how many movies have the trope where someone gets hit in the forehead with a gun and then they wake up tied up in a chair?
Yes.
As if getting knocked out is a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So for people who don't know, it's called being put in a coma. You are comatose. If someone can use blunt force to incapacitate you to the point where you're not conscious, you've been put in a coma. And my understanding is that if it's longer than even like 30 seconds or so, it is expected you'll have very serious brain damage from that. Yeah. So when the hero then wakes up, like I think it's like Casino Royale or whatever.
All of them. It's all of them. It's always it's a rifle butt stroke right to the forehead.
Here's what happens.
See every single John Wick.
Right.
What happens is they think they took out everyone in the room and they're like, and then the guy was like, oh, like yells something in German and hits him with the butt of the rifle.
One guy in the corner.
Yeah, exactly.
I beg people that think that kind of stuff, just go to a jiu-jitsu gym for one evening. Like just go and try and roll with someone that just roll with the white belts. Like, I mean, I'm a white belt. I don't know anything at all. But if you've never rolled jiu-jitsu, I could probably wrap you up. And it's like,
I heard
it's hard.
Mark Zuckerberg won a judo contest somewhere, right?
He looks like he's a bad man now. He may look kind of nerdy, but that man is going to tie you up in a knot.
He has no reason not to
Exactly.
be.
He got, apparently he was in a match and the ref said that he tapped out and he didn't, and he got really angry. Or he's like, I didn't tap, are you nuts? And then he ended up
beat
winning.
the ref.
And then he bought the gym.
Yeah.
He bought the gym and fired the ref.
That's right.
Snapped his finger, and then all the refs' dirty secrets just publicly appeared on everyone's phones.
They just fell out of all the Facebook secret messages he was sending. It's dirty. It is true, though, 100%. Like somebody who has some training versus someone who has no training, it's not even fair.
Yeah.
Someone who is a professional versus someone who has a lot of training, even, not even fair. So you look at these things and it's a total lack of an understanding of the physical reality of the world we live in. Yeah. And some of that, like you say, propagated by Hollywood, is also that women might be able to do that.
Yes.
Because that is not happening on that subway. That man in a state of mental duress, whatever it was that he walked in there, the Jordan Neely character, when he walks in and decides that he's going to lose it, you've seen that video of the guy, and who posted it? Maybe it was Ian Miles Chung too. But guy walks in, grabs a handful of hair, and he's dressed like kind of chickish.
The woman?
Yeah, and pulls her down to the ground. She can't go, and no one stands up.
Yep.
You know what makes me the most frustrated about that entire thing? Like, it makes me furious. Is that the guy who's filming it is like a pretty built, male-looking, masculine dude, and he's holding his phone, doing the bystander thing.
He'll go to jail.
Would he?
Yes.
Yeah.
Look what's happening with this guy Penny.
You know what? I'd rather go to jail. I'm sorry.
I agree.
My honor's not worth that. It's not worth it that I walk and go, I let a woman get dragged off and terrorized, and then she's going to think that every single day of her life. And
but she voted for it. This is.
I don't feel good about that answer either.
This is the problem.
That bothers me. Just as a Christian person, I can't hold people accountable.
Look, I can't
for big
say
actions
on
like that.
YouTube the answer that I feel good about. So
Listen. If the overwhelming majority of people in places like Chicago, LA, New York keep voting for the same people over and over again, I actually think it is fascist of you to imply that your will be done and that their democratic vote be ignored.
So here's the question.
So if they want to vote for it,
did they have another option is the other question. Because I've had this, I tend to feel the same way you do on an emotional level. And I had someone challenge me intellectually. And this is what they said. They said, was there a viable alternative? Was there even an alternative on the ballot in, let's say, Chicago? Because no Republican ran. Not that I think the Republican Party is the solution to anything at all, based on my personal experience so far. But you look at it and you go, was there anyone else they could have voted for? And
in
not,
Chicago,
whose fault is it?
Paul Vallis.
He was the right wing.
He was a moderate Democrat, tough on crime.
Okay.
And they elected the far left, critical race theorist, socialist guy.
What percentage did what is the name? Paul Vallis?
Vallis.
What did he get?
I think it was fairly close. I think it was only a few points for was it Brandon Johnson's name? I'm not completely sure.
100% with you, because Chicago politics are basically not relevant to my
Democrats
life.
have run the city for 100 years.
It's not going anywhere. But at the end of the day, do you hold the people that voted for the other guy? Is it their fault too? Because that's the tough part. I don't
Yes.
know. You do?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Like,
Tell me more.
after 100 years of the same thing, it's like you're holding your hand on the electric stove going like, man, this sure does suck, but I'll just keep staying here.
I just love the smell of burnt flesh.
I'll just stay right here. I left. I got out of Chicago.
Yeah.
I'd been shot at before. Me and my brother are driving down. We're driving off of 290 in Independence, and for no reason, a guy just points a gun at our car and fires at us. That's Chicago. And so eventually, I'm just like, I kind of don't want to be here. It feels like a nowhere town. I would tell my friends it's the suburb of the country. It's a big city, but it's culturally stagnant. It's extremely violent, and nothing is changing about it. So I'm done. I'm leaving.
I can get behind that. Yeah, like I say, I just want the question asked, is there any way that these people could not be culpable? And if the answer is no, then the answer is no.
Culpable is a strong word. I would put it this way. I get messages from people and they're like, Tim, I really need your help. We need to raise money for this guy who's being unjustly targeted or whatever. And I'm like, where did it happen? Oh, it happened in Chicago?
Pass.
Are you kidding, dude? Come on, man. Like 2 years ago, I said, I know it's hard, but you got to leave these cities. And the way I describe it is, people will tell me it's really hard to do. You want me to tell you about how I got out of Chicago? I sold all my stuff. I had $400 in cash. I found a ride share on Craigslist and said, I will drive. He had 2 cars. I said, I'll drive one of them behind you to San Diego. And that was it. And then, look, I was like 22 or 23 at the time.
Whatever. It's still a move, and a lot of people won't do it.
Not like I knew that LA, was how bad it was going to be or whatever. And moderately bad, but there's enough of LA is big enough to where I got by just fine and actually found more success. But I'm like, I'm not going to stay here. This place sucks. There's so many problems. It was so corrupt. The cops were corrupt. The government was corrupt. The crime was rampant. So I was actually intending on riding a moped. I'm like, I will just be homeless. And again, people say like, I have families, I can't do it. So let me put it this way. You are sitting in a house and the garage is on fire. The garage is attached garage. Okay. We see it happening. Oh, your neighbor was in the garage and he's screaming right now. And you're like, yeah, but I'm in the living room. And if I have to go outside, it's cold. And I have kids. My kids can't be cold. And it's like, dude, your house is on fire. If you stay inside of it, you will lose your life. It will get bad. If you leave your house now, you will survive and it will be very difficult. So the response I get from most people is, you don't know how hard it is. And I'm like, perhaps, but that doesn't change the fact statement that staying in places like Chicago, New York, Oregon, Portland, for instance, like, come on.
It's a no-go. Yeah, it looks like Beirut. It's crazy how bad it is there.
And it may be the hardest thing you've ever done, but there's not a whole lot I can say to the fifth, sixth person who's like, oh no, this guy broke into my house and I need to raise money. My mom was hurt. And I'm just like, come on, man.
No. Well, here's the thing. You say it's hard, and it is hard, but I'm 41. I got 3 kids. I sold my house because it was the right thing to do. I left a state that we were comfortable in. We had a palace. We were on like 2 acres. It was awesome. I had mountain views that like most people would stab for. And we left because you can do it. And we moved into 2 bedrooms that were my folks' place that I didn't own, which is super embarrassing at 41 years old. Nobody wants to go do that. But at the end of the day, can you go do this? Yes. Is it difficult? Sure. But you still got to do the right thing. I agree with you. They should be moving. I don't think there's any saving a lot of these places. I've been to West Baltimore. I see what it gets to eventually. West Baltimore looks like there was a zombie invasion and we lost.
East New York.
It's still going. And it's still there. And there's people that live there. It's crazy.
There are sections of Chicago very much the same. And it's kind of sad. There's tremendous opportunity in these. There are massive buildings on the south side of Chicago completely abandoned.
Yep.
And I'm just thinking to myself, there's tons of young people who want to do things, but there are these barriers, there's bureaucracy. But aside from that, you're talking about cities like Los Angeles that had a Democrat supermajority and still couldn't solve the homeless problem. Because they don't want to solve the homeless problem, because they don't want to deal with any of the issues. They just want to give you mindless self-indulgence, and then they'll take it, and then crime runs rampant, and then they blame conservatives, they blame everyone else.
Well, you look, they always build like infrastructure behind it. They always build bureaucratic systems that pay more of their buddies to have a job, but none of the jobs go to like getting homeless people. They get more homeless people. So putting money into the problem makes more problem. It's this classic. Do you ever see the demotivators? No. The demotivers, there was a whole thing in the 90s of like motivational posters, and they'd have like a picture, like hang in there, you can do it or whatever.
Yes.
So I used to have one on my screen, which I'm sure was fantastic on a government screen. And it used to have a picture of the U.S. Capitol building, and it said, government, if you what do they say? It says, if you don't like our problems, you should see our solutions. Which is a winner, and it's 100% accurate. But like, that's kind of the attitude. Like, government creates these things. There's another one that was about consultants, and it said consultants, something to the effect of, if you're not going to be part of the solution, there's a ton of money in continuing the problem. And that is Los Angeles. Like, that's the homeless situation in Los Angeles. They are continuing the problem for profit. And
you can always move to Florida.
You could.
Well, I just want to
still got cities there.
Make a note or make a comment on the question of like bureaucracies, especially in the Chicago area. So I was also born and raised in Cook County, and I have a number of horror stories just from people working within the various government systems there. Someone I knew insisted that when they first started a job working for Cook County, I won't say what they did. They were working very hard. And they were getting ahead on their work. Well, because it's also anecdotal, right? But according to them, they were getting ahead on their work. And during their first week there, and their coworkers basically surrounded them and said, "We don't do that much in a week."
That sounds correct.
We don't. We're just letting you know, like, no.
That is a classic government experience at all levels of government.
Yeah.
What happens if you like just say, "Cool, I'm still going to do it," and then just make everyone look really, really
disciplinary
bad?
action?
Disciplinary
action. They will throw
100%.
you under the bus.
Something will come up. Look, your TPS report wasn't filed correctly. So look, the other thing about doing a lot of work.
You thought the government wasn't garbage.
If you do a lot of work, right? You now have more opportunities for them to find procedural errors in your work. And so instead of people doing their job, they will spend every single minute of their time to crush you because you are upsetting the status quo.
Just abolish the whole thing.
It's so bad.
Get rid of the whole damn thing.
It's the worst solution to anything except when it's the only one.
I think what's going to happen is we're going to hear more and more of these stories. Someone's going to be like, "Oh, my house was set on fire during the riots. What do I do?" And it's like, well, should have sold it a year ago.
That's right.
Should have sold it 2 years ago. I don't know. Because when 2-3 years ago, the Summer of Love, 3 years ago, isn't that crazy?
Wild.
And it's like, well, what am I going to do? There's these riots going on. It's like, I get it. This sucks. It's hard. Now it's been 3 years. If you have not taken the first step towards getting away from these cities in 3 years, I don't know what you expect anyone else to do for you. No matter how hard you think it is, there comes a point where it's just like, everybody left, dude. People went to Texas, they went to Florida, they went to the middle of nowhere. Some people have West Virginia. And now you're going to look around as Antifa runs rampant and sets fire to your institutions and shuts down your infrastructure. And then you're going to be like, can someone please help me? And there's not going to be anybody there.
Yeah, no. I don't think it's wise to bet on there will be no more riots in these neighborhoods.
We're one
anymore.
outrage away from whatever the next trigger is, right? Because it's not about the underlying incident. It's about the activity of upsetting the apple cart. That some of these people are just professional, ne'er-do-wells.
There's part of me that thinks that there might not be riots before the election, because riots before the election make the existing administration look bad. Now, I'm not saying that it can't happen or whatever. I'm not making a prediction, but there's part of me that thinks it wouldn't make a whole lot of sense for the left to riot and upset people, your average normie voter.
But the rioters are not rioters are not political strategists, right?
No,
so
but
the media will try to spin it any which way, and I think you're right that certain conditions can be created for a riot to flourish, like political leaders not cracking down on them as they spring up. So I hear what you're saying there, but it's possible things just pop off, they can't do anything about it, and they try to spin it to sound like these riots are fiery but mostly peaceful protests, or whatever label they want to throw on it.
See, I'm of the opinion that the riots were not organic. I'm of the opinion that they were people were communicating with each other, letting other people, that other leftists, there was Antifa that were, the rioters and stuff. The Antifa network, the people that are in Antifa, they know each other, they communicate, and they're in touch with like other activists that are not rioters, that are people that they're in touch with teachers at schools and in colleges and stuff, people that are fairly intelligent, people that can strategize. So I do think that, and again, I'm not saying that, I'm not making a prediction, but I do think that I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see any kind of significant rioting, regardless of what happens in the country, just because it will make it more difficult for the left to win. For a Democrat to win.
I just want to make one more point. I just want to respond to that. That's an interesting point. That could be accurate. You could be right about that. But even so, the framing you have is until it's convenient for there to be more riots.
Of course.
And so you don't want to live in that neighborhood either way.
100%. Yes, I don't want to cut down anyone's idea about getting out of it. Tim's right. Get out of the cities if you can.
I want to jump to this story from the Daily Mail. Shocking moment: Tennessee high school student pepper sprays teacher twice after he confiscated her phone in class. And there's a lot here. Some people associate this with the increase in crime, recklessness, the collapse of authority in our institutions. And I thought it was interesting because we're talking about whether or not this woman was justified in pepper spraying this soy boy teacher who collapsed and falls to his knees after getting pepper sprayed for taking her phone. And I just find the whole thing interesting. The first point is just, our schools are messed up. Yeah. Don't have your kids in these schools. And the second thing is, to what degree should we entertain the authority of these teachers? But let's just start with this. A Tennessee high school teacher pepper sprayed twice by a student. Assault took place at Antioch High School outside of Nashville. Reports indicate the teacher had taken the student's phone. And I'm pretty sure she says in the video, "Give me back my phone." So what do you guys think?
Yeah. I think
it's a microcosm for all the things that are wrong, right? So we have an absence of masculinity, because I had teachers that if he took something from you, that was going to be your problem, right? It didn't matter if you had pepper spray. I had a guy that was in my high school who was our disciplinarian. He literally held a guy up by his throat against the wall. Should you do that? No, it was a private school, so we could get away with certain things, and people wanted that of their kids because he stepped out of line. So he had the physical ability to dominate. And this guy gets dominated by a chick with a pepper spray. That's not a good look. But you made an interesting point, and I agree with it. People have a lot of personal information on their phones. And that guy he's an agent of the government. That's the thing that I hadn't thought of. So is he representing an unlawful search and seizure there under the Fourth Amendment even? Because there's some interesting, he's representing certain authorities in power as a member of a local government. He is the government.
Before the show, when we were pulling up these stories, I said, this would be really interesting to talk about, because I got to tell you, if I was in a school and someone, I don't care who, teacher or otherwise, tried taking my phone, you be prepared for me to physically defend myself. There was no circumstance for me in after a certain age, I suppose, where a teacher would ever get away with anything like that I mean, I'm 13 years old. If they tried taking my Pokemon from me, I'd be like, I'll leave the building before you touch my property. So we're talking about a cell phone. This teacher, this it's a common trope. Like the teacher takes the phone away. You're not touching my phone. I got private messages in there. Mm-hmm. You got messages with your parents in there, and the teacher's like, I'm going to take that from you. You ain't touching it. I will leave before I let you do that. When he grabbed her phone from her, that's theft. That's seizure by we point out government. Someone.
I hadn't thought about it until we were literally in the moment here.
Yeah.
But there is some interesting implications about that, and I do think that the correct answer is send her out of the room. Look, you're being a distraction. You've been removed from the classroom. I'm done with you. Go deal with the administration. That's their job. And you go back to teaching. That's probably the right move. So we've got a couple of mistakes. Like, right, we're like 5 stops down from where things shouldn't have happened. But
has this always been the case that teachers would take something from the students?
I think it depends on. So there are certain places, especially private schools, where you sign away. You know, your parents, your minders, your the people that have the authority, your power of attorney, are going to say that they have certain authorities to do certain things like that. And you know, when I was a kid, like we didn't have that. Like there was my cell phone that I had, which I think I got when I was 17, was attached to a car, and the only way you were bringing it in is if you were bringing the whole thing in. It came out of the console, so that wasn't a real possibility. And I was an outlier. Most people didn't have that capability. That being said, I don't think you should get pepper sprayed and hit your knees with your back to your enemy and cover yourself and cry like a woman. That is very offensive to me as a dude. It's troubling to watch someone go do that kind of action. It's like, hey man, you lost your man card too. Not only did you lose to a chick, but you lost your man card, and now no one's going to look at you again.
Yeah, a cop should just, or I mean, the teacher should have just kicked her out. Let her keep her phone.
Send her
Get
out.
out of here.
Yep.
Leave. I mean, it's probably going to be kicking her out every day, and you're going to end up kicking her out of school because she's probably not going to listen tomorrow. She'll be back.
She didn't look like she could take direction based on her interactions.
No.
But also, as you mentioned, I don't know you mentioned the possibility that we're talking about someone probably 16 to 18 based on the high school, right? And she was an older high school student.
She's got private photos.
She may have private photos, which we don't have to discuss the nature of, but probably would be actually a crime to possess.
Yep.
If you're a dude, so that's not something you want to get
It's
involved
just
in.
like the funny,
it's just bad actions all around.
But it's also funny when like she pepper sprays him and he just falls to his knees.
It hurts me. It
Yeah.
hurts my masculinity. Like I
I-
want him to go chop wood.
Like
he needs to grow a beard. He has a beard too, doesn't he?
Is this the,
Yeah,
he
has a beard.
Is that the video?
Yeah. Yeah,
Here we go. Watch.
He's like running from her.
Yes, he needs to shave his face immediately. And
She's like Pepe Le Pew, just like walking casually. Oh, did they skip the part where
now
he
we got
falls to
hands
his
on.
knees?
No, it's coming at the end. She sprays.
What is he doing? This is look at this.
There she gets him. Oh, down, surrender, fail. Turns his back.
What is
Hey,
this?
he's still
It's
trying
like-
to maintain control of the phone.
That's the only upside to this guy is that he held onto the property, so he won that minor victory while losing his man card.
That's wild.
Yeah, and people around him are like, I just got pepper sprayed too. You know, the thing about pepper spray, it's a very imprecise defensive weapon.
It sprays all over.
It is the worst. In fact, I remember going through the academy and everybody has to get sprayed with it. But the one thing they said is like, here's your pepper spray. Now put it somewhere where you'll never use it because it's awful. If you ever use it, like when you see a guy like on a search warrant, if you're trying to subdue a subject and they're like, I got this, I'm going to, nobody wants that happening. Like,
It sprays it's everybody.
Everybody's
And it
going to be
burns
pepper sprayed.
everything.
It sucks.
People think it's like it gets in your mucus membranes, it burns, but
that's right.
on your skin you're irritated. You're like,
I remember taking a shower afterwards and my neck was burning.
Yep.
I'm like, this is terrible. But
yeah, when we were at the J17 riots, was it J20th riots in 2017 when Trump was getting inaugurated.
I was there too.
And we were, me and Luke are like
Undercover.
drenched in pepper spray.
God.
You go take a shower afterwards and it just burns.
It just reactivates.
Yeah, it just reactivates and it's burning all over.
100%.
I don't know, man. I saw this story. I thought it was
CS is
fascinating.
way worse, by the way.
What is
CS gas.
CS gas?
Yeah, the
When-
tear gas is way worse for me.
When we were in Ferguson, the police were using CS smoke, so they called it tear gas. And
That's the stuff that fogs and kind of lingers down there on you.
And CNN reported there was no tear gas being fired; it was just smoke. And it's because these are evil people. I'm pretty sure it was Don Lemon. So
Ryan Riley was the guy who saw the earplugs on the
That's
ground
right.
and thought they were rubber bullets. He's
That's
one of my-
right.
He's one
That
of my
was my
biggest.
He's like, are these
he's probably
rubber
watching.
bullets?
He's one of my biggest fans.
we were I'm on the ground and we are gagging in tear gas, and I started to pass out because I got into a cloud of it, and tunnel vision starts forming.
It's a choking agent.
Right. It's displacing the oxygen in my lungs, and then I fall down, and I got lucky. Some kid splashed water in my face. It's a craziest thing. I have no idea. So I'm in Ferguson, tear gas everywhere, gunshots go off. Cops are like, go, run. So I'm running and and I walk through a cloud of tear gas, inhale it all, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I can't breathe. I'm like, it's just my lungs aren't working. And then I'm like, and then I get tunnel vision where everything starts turning black to a point.
Oof.
And then I just fall down on the grass on my back. And the next thing I know, some kid splashes water in my face and I go, and I shouldn't have done that. I don't know how that kid knew, or maybe he was just fortunate.
Just gave a sympathetic shock.
Splashing water triggers the inhale reflex or whatever.
What's crazy is we used to call that meeting the wizard.
Meeting the wizard.
Yeah. So you've seen the Wizard of Oz, right? And
Yeah.
everything.
Oh my
What
gosh.
people don't realize is that when you start getting hypoxic like that, and I've been there too many times in a very chaotic way, but what happens is you lose color vision first, and
Yeah.
you don't know it. It's very insidious. Hypoxia is an insidious sort of move. So you lose the color vision, and then, like you say, you get that Bugs Bunny at the end of the Looney Tunes where it starts tightening down.
That's all, folks.
Yeah, and
To a point.
you're looking through the tunnel, right? And then that goes out. And what other people don't realize too is that when you do that in slow motion, especially if you're underwater, the last thing to go is your auditory nerves, different nerves. So you'll actually stop being able to see, but you'll still hear. So you can feel things around you, you can hear things around you, but you can't see anything.
Yeah.
And then you go out. We call that meeting the wizard because that's when you go to Oz, right? And then when you wake back up, like obviously, like you had, the kid splashed you, thank God. And then you get that recovery, and you pop up, and then everything kind of comes back out at once, and you get the color vision. So that's kind of going to Oz.
It's I don't know, man.
It's a phenomenon that very few people can relate to if they haven't ever. You can't fake it. You can only experience it.
Oh, for sure. And I wonder what would have happened to me if that kid wasn't happening. He was standing there with a bottle of water and he just poured it on my face, and I'm like, like it was the craziest thing, and I'm like, whoa, and I was like, boom, back, everything was normal again.
Yeah, goofy enough, you've probably got about 2-3 minutes worth of sitting there stagnant without breathing even, and you're still okay. But it can get bad fast, and that's why tear gas is one of those things where it's an area avoidance tool. You can pivot to what happened at January 6th. They were releasing this stuff, and it was just going everywhere, and they were lobbing it into the crowd, and then they were forcing the crowd into the barriers, right? So that just tells me that those people don't know how to use that particular tool, which is not their fault. They probably weren't trained on it. You spray it where you don't want people to be, which is usually where you are, and then you put your mask on, and then it's an area denial, as opposed to putting it into people and making them run like you did.
People don't understand too. When I was in Turkey, the police fired it into a tunnel, and the people just collapsed. Like there's no air anymore, and they just started falling down, and then people were like, you got to run in there and drag them out. Don't breathe. Yeah. So the crazy thing too is people don't realize that the stuff they use in the U.S. is nothing. The stuff they use.
We have rules here.
Yeah. In Brazil, I was like, tear gas, say nothing, and I'm like, I'm like, mucus is just pouring out of every orb. Like,
that is my experience.
Yeah.
Full on. What they do for everybody who goes through basic training. So anybody who's done military training has seen this. They don't do it the same way for cops, as far as I know, but some guys get it. But you go into like a chamber, and then they fill the chamber up with smoke, and you've got your mask on, and you're like, this looks like a really bad place to take off a mask. And then they tell you to take it off, and then you have to say a paragraph of some kind. Usually it's a rote memory thing. And you're going like, and you just have no ability to put any, you're like, and you have to get out the paragraph or they won't let you out. So the worst, you're just
Is it kind of fun though?
It's, I mean, everything
The
is awful is
adrenaline
fun.
rush, adrenaline rush after you come out is insane. So when I went
I would have
in,
rather been in because I have everything empty out of my eyes, my ears, my nose.
Yep,
I'm like
and it's like
vomiting,
pouring on your
retching
nose.
It's horrible.
when I went in there, when I was in, they make you take your mask off, and you have to wait for everyone in the room to get the mask off
right.
before you can put it on to clear it. Then you take it off again, and then you say whatever it is. Then you put it on again and clear it. Then they let you out. So you're standing there holding the mask in front of your,
Waiting for all the idiots that lick windows on the bus.
and you can hear the guy just go. He's like, "We're waiting on everyone. We're waiting on," and you're just sitting there dying, wanting to kill the person.
Right.
So yeah, but when you come out, the adrenaline and stuff after you survive, you're walking out and
Well,
you're
you feel
fresh
like
air.
you accomplished
You
something.
feel it's great.
The gas they
Super
used
high.
in Turkey was not as strong as Brazil, but it was so intense that the masks we had didn't work at all.
I like that you're a connoisseur of CS gas. That's,
of
that's
course.
not a thing that everybody has in their repertoire. You should put that on your
Tim
on your
can tell
resume.
you about the flavor profile.
That's what I'm telling you.
That's right, that's right.
It's like there's a fine bouquet with a hint of all of it. He spits it back out, clears his palate with some water, and spray it again.
Give me another,
You're not actually
give me another
supposed to
taste.
swallow it. Like it's like tasting wine. It's like being a sommelier.
Remember when Homer became a mall cop and he pepper sprayed his eggs and then he ate them?
That's how it goes. So one of the things I remember when I was in Portland, I went into one of the places. This is off duty, so we're just like we went to Whole Foods and got some food. We went to a pub and stuff like that. And me and my buddies were walking through. And at some point, we went through some park, and there's all the metal railings. As you know, as the CS dissipates, it doesn't go away. It just comes out of the air and it settles. So you'll see it like on railings, and every once in a while, somebody will touch the railing where the CS was, and it activates. Or they'll get some of the pepper spray, and it activates on a hand. And so I just remember one of my buddies was like in front of me going down these stairs, and then he reached his hand up and he goes, "Don't touch that rail." And we're like, "What?" And he's like, "It's spicy." Like he couldn't come up with anything else, but it was legit spicy. You watch him, his hand is over there throbbing, and you go like, "Oh yeah, I don't want this." You can put it on your eggs. You get your man card back if you drop to your knees in a high school after stealing a girl's phone and you cry like a girl, I think you get your man card back if you put it on your eggs like for a week.
Dude, I remember when I was like, I must have been 12 or 13, and I was in my buddy's garage, and he had some pepper spray. I was like, what is this? And I just like sprayed it. It was horrible. It was horrible. I didn't get the full exactly. I didn't get the full effect of like having it directly sprayed in my face, but it was not a fun experience. I was like, okay, now I understand why this is used as a deterrent.
Yeah. You don't want that.
I didn't like that.
Pepper balls are, I think, relatively common now in riot control stuff. And I've been hit in the face with a pepper ball, ricochet. So when I was in Baltimore, I think it was the Freddie Gray riots. The cop, for no reason, me and 2 other people clearly with cameras filming, he fired at something. I think it was aiming for my face. But it hit something to my left, like the wall, and then sprayed plastic bits and pepper all into my face. And I'm like, ah!
Did you have glasses on?
No.
You knew now, though. Eye protection, very critical.
Well, normally, like even in my old YouTube picture, it's like with the goggles.
Yeah.
And I'm like on a roof in New York. And
but you don't know when to put the goggles on, and it sucks to put them on the whole time.
Exactly. Yep. And then we
once you catch it,
we
it's
would
too
also
late.
wear the gas masks on our neck and the goggles. And it's just like you want to try to avoid using them because you want to maximize your sensory,
For sure.
Your awareness.
Well, that's the other thing. Most people have those things, and you see, I saw Antifa guys in Portland, and I don't know, maybe gals or maybe neither, whatever they wanted to identify as. And they have all that equipment, but a lot of them, if you don't train in that stuff, if you don't spend time in it, you're lost. Because the second, like imagine if somebody just suddenly just gave you just like a tube to look through, and you're like, here's your new world.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can't hear anything, which changes your balance, it changes your jaw, like the way you step, the way you identify.
Cuts out your peripheral vision.
You don't know who's standing to your left or your right. It gets really dangerous.
They have
and
those
scary.
full face masks where it's a sheet of plastic basically over your face.
Yep.
And those are better, but you still have barriers on your left and your right. So it's, looking through, like you said, like a tunnel.
Yeah. Well, you imagine the guys that are running out there with night vision. Your security guy was telling me about. He's like, I got to invest, and it's like you got to spend time in it. You got to go for walks with night vision on, just in your neighborhood. You look like a psychopath, but you got to do it.
I've got some.
I recommend
Nighttime
it.
mischief.
You might be involved in nighttime mischief as long as you stay on the road, right? But
Well,
you got to
binos, Tim.
Yeah, I've got the really expensive ones. They're like
Are they the panos or are they the?
No, the binos.
No. Yeah,
Yeah, like some 31s or something.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called, but very expensive. They're like $10,000. That
sounds right.
And they sit right here, and you can't see around.
It's
you
bizarre,
see straight. They're awesome. Look up at the sky, and you
That's
can
it.
see satellites.
Yeah,
and you're
no,
like,
it could be a spiritual experience for people.
Yeah, it's looking at the sky through night vision is.
That's what I did with my mother-in-law. I actually shared it with my mother-in-law. She was like, "This is incredible. This is worth the price."
You
of
see
these."
satellites.
Yeah, you could see everything.
It's crazy.
Get IR flashlights for your guns now.
Yeah.
So you put the IR flashlights on.
Right.
And then when you turn the light on, only you can see the light. It's pitch black for everybody else, and you can see the light.
Well,
get a
Nick,
laser in there, then you're set to go. Moon's out, goons out.
That's right. I have it.
I want to jump to this story here about Michael Knowles. We got this story from Timcast.com. Anheuser-Busch. Michael Knowles details Bud Light parent company's ties to WEF, saying they're mired in World Economic Forum ESG gobbledygook. He says the Anheuser-Busch is still scrambling over the Mulvaney beer can as sales continue to tank, but it's caught between a rock of customers and a hard place called GARM, a World Economic Forum-backed operation, which was subpoenaed Friday by Jim Jordan in the House Judiciary. Here's why. One might think that Bud Light could just apologize and admit that men aren't women, but no matter how much Bud Light and parent company AB InBev might wish to rein in the radicalism, they can't abandon the agenda. They're mired in World Economic Forum ESG gobbledygook. He says, Budweiser claims to be a beer rooted in the heart of America, but in 2008, the Belgian company InBev bought AB for $52 billion, putting a fixture of American culture into a European rival's hands, per the New York Times. Now it's beholden to the elites of the World Economic Forum, UN, and EU. Bud Light's suggestion that the Dylan Mulvaney endorsement was just some one-time thing would be more believable if AB InBev didn't openly admit to wanting to ensure their pro-trans diversity touches upon all functions, including marketing. He says AB InBev has embraced a litany of woke initiatives from ESG to DEI, along with full endorsement of transgenderism. They now foot the bill when employees choose to mutilate their bodies. So I believe, I want to get the precise language from, here we say, we have introduced inclusive benefits such as gender-affirming medical support for transgender colleagues in the U.S. and Canada, and financial and legal support for name changes for colleagues in Brazil and Colombia. So when they say it was just one can and it was a rogue third-party marketing, let me tell you what they're really saying. First, it's not. Second, boy, are they scared. They're lying and trying to pass the buck off in desperation because 26% drop in sales by the end of, I think it was April, April 15th. So we don't even have the sales data for the week after that and the week after that. We're nearly 2.5 weeks since those numbers came out. How much you want to bet it's worse? It's becoming a cultural phenomenon, and they are reeling from it.
I don't think that. I mean, the idea that having this gender bending of the popularization of the LGBT community that is popular with a certain segment of the population, but yeah, it's a small segment, and it tends to be younger people. But to think that that's going to work with, even millennials, definitely not Gen X, not boomers, and millennials, probably it's still small. You get maybe the Zoomers, but that's about it. And so, like Tim had mentioned before, it boils down to advertising to kids. And your average person is just like, I don't want to think about that stuff when I'm hanging out with my buddies drinking beer. I don't want to think about your political stuff. And that's really what it is. It's shoehorning sexual politics or the politics of sexuality into everyday life. And most people just want to live their lives and hang out with their friends.
And why take that shot? Like, why?
Nobody
Like,
wants to. It's not popular.
They think there are too many people. Simple as that.
Yes.
So they're creating a culture around people having less children. And
I'm fighting that one child at a time.
Yeah,
I got a pregnant wife, so I'm fighting it right now actively.
You want to win the culture
awesome.
war? You want to win the culture war? You start with one thing. For every kid they don't have, you have two.
That's it. I used to say the same thing about meat. When people would say, I'm not going to eat meat because it's cruel. And it's like, for every cow you don't eat, I'm going to eat two. That gets really, really hard to do. I could do it with maybe like one steak at a time. I've done it just as
got to order twice as many ounces.
That's it.
You say, is that person over there vegan? I'll get an extra steak.
Well,
Yeah, send me the 22 ounce.
You have to stop meeting vegans too, because eventually you're going to be eating so many extra cows. It's just going to be too much.
You're going to become just what you eat.
All cows.
You eat
Oh my gosh, you're
I
going
I had a sergeant I worked with, and he would always look at people, and he was like, you are what you eat. And we're like, uh-huh. And he was like, to become a tank, you must eat a tank. And I was like, what are you talking about? He'd always eat like this, like he would shovel things in forward, like 90 degrees to his face. It's like, I know that's funny.
That worked.
But then when someone starts meatheading like that, they start doing it more and more. They start becoming the tank. The more you eat the meat, the more beefcake you have to become, obviously.
I watch those videos from Fleckus Talks, and those YouTubers will go to Times Square and ask questions like, name a country that starts with the letter U. And they're like, Utah. Nice. And you're just like, oh
yeah. How many things are in a dozen?
And then the host will just be like, how about the United States of America? And they go, oh. And it's just like, you have to imagine that Klaus Schwab is watching those videos too, and he's like, don't you get it? This is why I'm doing what I am doing. Like,
eliminate the people. They're too dumb to continue.
They're Malthusian. They think there's too many people, and so they quite literally want there to be less of them. Mm-hmm. And that's a fact.
Does that coincide with AI to be able to do the grunt work? Because someone's going to still have to do all the stupid things.
Yes,
like
maybe. But let me say this. My point was, I want to finish the point. It is a fact that global elites think there's too many people. Bill Gates talks about it all the time.
Sure.
It is also a fact there is a culture being built around people not having kids, sterilizing their kids, or sterilizing themselves. Whether or not those two things are related, it's up to you to decide.
That's fair. Did you ever read Rainbow Six, the original Tom Clancy book? You've seen the game, obviously.
Yeah.
The book itself, and this goes back, somebody will have to say how long it goes back. Maybe they'll tell you in the chat, like what year it was written. But it goes back and it talks about these global elites who want to get rid of all these people. They set up a utopian set of preserves. They bought up all this land with a ton of money. And then they decide to kill everybody with a super virus. And they almost get away with it, except Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six guys go kill everybody, which is fantastic. But the fact of the matter is this idea has been propagated for a long time, even in pop culture.
Have you played The Division?
I haven't played very many games in a while. I got little kids.
The Division is a plague, basically wipes out the planet, and then the government activates Presidential Directive 51, creating a continuity of government, and then you're the Division to go in and try and restore functions, and you're like in New York in the apocalypse.
That sounds.
And they talk about
that sounds prophetic at this point, right?
They talk about Operation Dark Winter, I think it was called.
Wasn't that one of the actual things that was going on? These COVID reveals?
The massive war game about a pandemic wiping out the planet or something like that.
Yeah, I think we saw a very light version in 2020. The only upside that I ever see about 2020, which is minimal, because a lot of people lost a lot of freedom, a lot of careers were destroyed, a lot of families had a lot of discord and stuff like that. The only thing that I saw that was good was essentially that the ball got moved, the goalposts were moved while people were watching in real time, and they did 10 years worth of a jump in a few months. And everyone was like, oh, what are they doing? Like, look at that. I see it. I see them doing it. They saw the game.
Yep.
And so some people, not everybody obviously, but a lot of people were able to see that the game has changed.
Yep.
And now they're onto it. So it's a lot harder to pull that stuff off. And they were doing it as a dry run. But they revealed their hand. They dropped the veil and people saw it.
There's a mutual of mine on Twitter. He's a New Hampshire legislator. His name's Mike Belcher. He's at Mike Belcher 14, and he's got this great theory that Alex Jones can actually see the future, but he can only see the future when he's looking through a potato. So it's like this crazy, weird way to explain the future, but it still kind of pans out where Alex Jones is kind of right.
Is it possible that he's from the future? Because some of the things he said to me, he didn't say it to me personally. He doesn't speak in my head, although I would take that. That would be fun. That would be fun. But some of the things he said, I look at it and I go like, I could never even have come up with that idea. His thought experiments that he has, especially about like time travel and aliens, I go like, that's probably the most plausible thing I've ever heard.
It's possible,
and he
but
said it while he was high and hammered.
It's possible, but I really do like the idea of like Alex Jones kind of like searing into a potato.
Yeah, divining the future.
Like, exactly. Like it's the crystal ball,
Like
but
some
it's
kind
just
of
a big
Irish
old,
fortune teller.
It's like it's a big old russet.
You see, that was you who did that, Seamus.
No, I don't believe in magic.
I didn't say anything about potatoes.
That's fair.
That's right. That's fair. I did make that.
It could have been a
anti-Irish joke.
prophecy.
Yeah,
Of some
exactly.
kind. Like,
That's also true.
There are many gifts, but one spirit, right?
Amen.
What's an Irish witch called?
I guess a druid.
Really?
My buddy would call anybody who wears a hoodie a druid. He would yell that at them. He's from New York. And whenever you'd see people walking with their hood down and they would upset him, he'd be like, what are you doing, you druid? And people would I was like, that's a very sophisticated, sort of insult. I'm not 100% sure people know what's going
But
on.
I don't know. They're not associated with that kind of magic, are they?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
The
Let me double check
Stonehenge,
though.
that was all druids, right?
Yeah, but I thought that was more like
they came there and sacrificed
astrology.
things.
Well,
the people who built it, but I think the story was the Druids kind of adopted it and started doing their own kind of thing because they're like, look at these cool stones.
like a seer,
we don't have to put anything
like
up.
a fortune teller or a witch. I don't know if druids are like looking into
the future.
stones. and
Well, I
stuff.
got news for you. None of them are actually looking into the future. But I don't know if. I
Except
don't know
for the
if
Irish ones looking at potatoes.
yeah, the Irish. I mean,
What about Alex Jones? You're debunking the whole
If
premise.
the Irish
here.
had the gift of foresight, the world might look a little bit different.
That's so true. It's like an 11-layer sort of evaluation in one little sentence.
I don't know. Just Seamus always tells me that I'm racist for bringing up these Irish jokes, and here he is. He's just going off.
Because I'm allowed to though.
You're
I'm
allowed-
Irish too.
No, remember when Lance told you what your ethnicity is?
Yeah, when he said that, although I'm not white, I'm white.
Exactly. So I'm telling you, although you're Irish, you're not. But it's okay because I'm a plastic patty too. I was born here.
Don't you have to
I've said this before, dude. Irish people will be like, how can you say you're Irish when you were born in America? It's like, dude, I'm not bragging. Right? It's an admission. It's an admission. People should know, all right, ethnically, where my ancestors came from. I think I owe them that.
Dude, I'm not bragging.
We have a bunch of other stories too that I want to.
I like that you just have Klaus Schwab looking over this whole meeting and this discussion, and he's just looking down with disgust.
An awful guy.
Disapproving.
Just an awful guy.
He just looks like a Bond villain. I feel like they're not trying that hard when they cast him. They're like, who could we get to look exactly like
He
the bad
dresses
guy?
like a Bond villain.
Yeah, because he is a Bond villain. He's a legitimate real life Bond villain. He sounds like one.
I guess we can wrap this one up
His
by just saying,
plans are
don't buy
villains.
Anheuser-Busch products, and we're going to go to Super Chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member, because we're going to have a members-only uncensored show going live at about 10 p.m. on the front page of timcast.com for all you to watch and see. And I want to talk about Jake Shields challenging trans men to a fight, but we'll save that one for the members-only, not so family-friendly, uncensored show. But let's read those super chats. All right. Cat at Good Peasant says, "Damn, can't believe I've been a member this long. I don't always agree with you, Tim, because I can make up my mind, but I appreciate your commentary. Chaotic Good Peasant member, 35 months. Wow. That's a very, very long time. I can't believe we've been doing this job this long. It's crazy. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Tim, I was up in the Poconos this weekend, went to a local bar. Bartender asked what I wanted, said, definitely not a Bud Light. The locals around the bar laughed. She said, you're not the only one.
A lot of kegs going, just sitting there.
I've been making those jokes the past few weekends too, and everyone laughs when I mention Bud Light. Like, someone will be like, you want to get a drink? Oh, Bud Light, huh? And then everyone just laughs. And then the guy's like, I'll have a Yingling.
Yeah,
It's like-
people would rather have a Smirnoff Ice.
Yeah, I would.
They'd rather get iced than have a Bud
Do they
Light
still
right
have
now.
Bacardi 03? Is that still a thing?
I don't know. Bartles and James.
Zima.
Well, have you ever seen that, like the meme where they have it's like the thing from the Mystery Wagon. What is that called? Scooby-Doo. They do the Scooby-Doo meme where they unzip the Smirnoff Ice and it's actually it's Zima.
Yeah. Zima.
It's the same thing. They just changed the label.
Alex says, so we just going to ignore murderers who watch leftist content, who's killed people and watched The View, The Young Turks, Chris Cuomo?
The
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But see, the thing is, we don't got to play their narrative. Of course they're going to make up stupid garbage nonsense. I don't care, whatever. They're a cult. It's like, it's like if a bunch of cultists knocked on your door and told you the moon was made of cheese and they needed money from you, are you going to be like, well, I really don't want to be embarrassed in front of the moon cultists? You're going to be like, get out of here. And you're going to wiggle a broom at them. Like, get off my porch, you crazy moon people.
To be fair,
You're only saying that because Moonlord's not on tonight.
Well, if he was here, he'd defend himself.
well, to be fair too, they're already watching The View. Like, what else are you going to be able to do to them?
Never.
right?
No one should
There's no
ever
further
worry
punishment.
about what Heaven's Gate thinks of them.
They
Like,
were very orderly. I lived in San Diego when that went down.
Really?
And it was very orderly.
You don't have to worry
Rich
about what
Bernardo.
Scientology thinks about you, except for their legal department. You don't
Unless
have
you
to
have the
worry
right
about-
Nikes.
Yeah. So
They had purple capes.
Amanda Dilt says, Tim, I use some of your videos where guests are talking about their experience to break people out of the matrix. Well, there you go. Chris Bennett says, what watch is Kyle wearing?
It's a Seiko. It's a Seiko with a cool James Bond, what do you call it? Little band that I put on.
Cool.
They're called NATO bands.
Brian Pike says, we live down the street from the Allen Outlet Mall. We the people.
Raj.
OMG Puppy says, Bellingcat is an MI6 front. Oh, there you go.
So apparently it gets CIA dollars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the report. It's fairly mainstream sourcing. So,
It's a way to launder intelligence agencies' lies into the corporate press.
like I said, minimally backstopped. So it's not like
Because-
they're
Here's how it works, right? If someone from MSNBC reports that the follower was a fan of me or Libs of TikTok, we can't sue them because they're just referencing a security agency. And then we can sue them, and they've got infinite funding through the government or whatever it is they're doing.
infinite lawyers.
Right. So it's just they're liars, manipulators. They're just genuinely evil
Propaganda.
people. Yeah, it's like if you look up evil in the dictionary, you find those people. Threat to Democracy says, Tim, the next time you and the show talk about religion and giants, you should bring on Wendigoon or Aiden from the Lore Lodge. They know all about that. Also, can I hear Phil do his best Optimus Prime impression?
Autobots roll out.
Oh, that was good.
Not bad, yeah, man. That's pretty good.
For on the fly, that was
Yeah,
that was exceptional.
I haven't
actually, for the
practiced
fly.
it, so
Seamus, can you do Optimus Prime?
Probably not as well. He's like,
Autobots roll out.
Do it like an Irish guy now. Do an Irish.
Autobots roll out.
When we were in
that's
Miami,
exciting, little
we just kept
Autobots.
having Seamus do weird, random mishmash
they
voices.
would throw me like different voices mashed together.
What are do you remember any of the ones that we did that were?
We come up with a new one, man.
No, I can't remember. But it was hilarious. It was like, what did we have?
Are they all masculine voices?
Yeah, it's like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, the most masculine voices.
It's like if you're not going to embody the archetypal definition of hero by metaphorically dying, you're never going to kill a snake guy.
It's like
That's Kermit on
It's got-
speed
it's like
too. It
Kermit-
actually works really well. You just found a hack.
The universal healthcare is bad for America, okay, gang?
that
Yeah,
sounds like
it's wonderful.
Kermit in 1986.
Quan Jin says, PBD and Timcast is the crossover I've been waiting for. So when does he come over to your show? And also, any plans for future business collabs? I don't know. Yeah, I went down to Miami to go on the Valuetainment podcast with Patrick Bet-David, and it was awesome. It's a really, really fun show. I think we went a little longer than we were planning because we were having such a good time. And they're doing really, really amazing stuff down there in Miami. So I'm really excited for what Valuetainment has. Their offer for Tucker Carlson, $100 million, was real. Yeah, we talked about what their plans are, what they're doing, and they genuinely were like, yes, they offered Tucker that money.
Is that a per year?
25 per year. So I think it was 100 million over 4 years or something.
Okay,
Is
and
that
so
what it
that'd
was?
be
Or was it
about
5 years?
It's a 25% bump up from what he was making at Fox.
Is that what it
He was
was?
making 20 a year there.
Oh wow. But he's going to do his own thing and make more money anyway. So
He can bankroll it. He could do nothing
Right.
or anything. Right?
There's part of me that hopes that he gets with Musk and actually does the show on Twitter.
Is that what they're talking about doing?
Well, I don't know, but I know that Musk has talked about content creators uploading video and stuff directly to Twitter. So it may sound a little odd to people, but I wouldn't be surprised if Musk was thinking that, because Musk wants Twitter to succeed, and
Elon Musk, hear me out. Twitter needs a smart TV app, and you should roll that out immediately so that Twitter videos in long form can be played on TV like TV shows.
Musk, listen to me. None of these people are ambitious enough. Just hear me out. What you need to do is find a way to just project Tucker Carlson onto the sky every single night at every point in the world. Okay? Do it right over China so the people living under the CCP can't be deprived of his content. Do it over the United States so the censors can't keep him off the air. So Fox can't fire him. Yeah, you can do it, Elon.
Build a giant speaker and bounce the sound off the moon.
That's right.
So that it reflects off the moon over the entirety of whatever part of the planet
we're all dead. That's going to hit the brown note. And
the left wants you to think, I can't project from the atmosphere. I can.
But he's also got he has a whole gigantic constellation of satellites currently in the air. He could probably do something with that.
You can just take over everyone's phones, and Tucker just appears in your phone.
Right?
But in all seriousness, Elon, please do not do that. Please don't do that. Please don't put anything in the sky. Please don't put images in the sky. I was memeing. If I brought that upon humanity, I would be very upset with myself.
It's like Elon's watching and he's like, actually, that was a pretty good idea.
No, I didn't mean it, Tim. Rewind. Take this episode down. Don't let anyone see this. No.
I like to think he writes things down on like a piece of paper. He folds it like a very elaborate paper airplane, and he throws it to some assistant that just makes it happen. Just sends it off to the team of engineers. That's his delivery mechanism. Now we
Chris Pavoto says, my 8-year-old son has Down syndrome. For the service guarantees citizenship, please continue to expand that passion for special needs, as I'm retired military and he'll never be able to join. Also, still waiting for Phil to read my DM on Twitter. I use my name. Well, anybody can. The service isn't military. When service guarantees citizenship in Starship Troopers, it could be like working at a library or something, or it could be any kind of. It could be cleaning up garbage. It could be cleaning up parks. It could be planting flowers. So it's not all about the military. That's why it worked. Hypothetically, why it works.
Yeah, they always act like that was supposed to be a cautionary tale when you watch that movie, but I watched it and I was like,
the book wasn't.
There's some really good ideas that are being...
But how is it a cautionary tale? It's the weirdest thing. Like I know that the left often said that it was like they're fascists, and the guy who made the movie tried to make them look like Nazis.
Right.
But I'm like, wait, the story is that
they were the heroes.
The bugs bomb Buenos Aires and wipe it off the planet, so then we respond to try and stop them from doing it again. I'm like, I'm confused. Like they attacked us.
It's 100% the same thing that happened if you read Ender's Game, right? It's the same exact idea. It's like you can't communicate with them.
Right.
You have no ability to negotiate.
They're attacking you.
It's over. You got to go after them and try and wipe them out. That's the only.
And I don't understand where they're like service guaranteed citizenship is a bad thing.
No, even think about this. Like people on the left would love, what is it called? AmeriCorps, where they send people to go teach. Mm-hmm. Right? You go teach in a school for 18 months. Like you put some skin in the game.
Well, that's
the whole goal.
When I was talking with Vivek Ramaswamy, he just said when you sign up for selective service, selective service,
yes,
men and women both do it. When you do, you get a voter card. If you don't sign up, you don't have to. Don't worry about it, but you don't get a voter card.
And we're also going to select you.
Not necessarily.
I mean, I like that idea though.
I'm
into the idea. We're select you to do something.
The idea is that only men are signing up for selective service. No one really expects them ever to call ever again, unless it's a true catastrophe.
I thought I was going to get called up. You didn't think so?
No.
They gave me a Gillette razor.
Oh, yeah.
This is in the year 2000. I got a Gillette razor, and I was like, okay, at any moment, like...
Really? I mean, I wasn't old enough.
Yeah, I just thought around. I was like, I don't know what would happen next. But then right after that was 9/11.
Yeah.
It was a year later.
So that's the idea.
Real. It seemed like it was a possibility.
You can choose not to sign up.
Yeah.
And then you don't vote.
I also wasn't that aware at 18.
Yeah.
I was dumb. Like
anything to lower the number of uneducated voters, I'm okay with.
What do you think about property rights? Is that a good one?
Well, I mean, I'm
property rights as a, what do you mean?
Owning property is a requirement to.
No, that doesn't make sense.
I think there's part of me that wants to say property or business owner. And the reason I say or business owner, because you can start a business on your phone.
Agreed.
You can start a business that's legitimate.
What if your net payment in federal taxes is positive? That you actually have a federal tax that you paid something.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then you have a say. But if you don't, if you're a net recipient of tax money, then you don't get to.
That may be the best standard.
It seems like the easiest one to me. It's like you don't get to vote for a living.
Seems like the most basic
you,
one. Yeah.
You who are receiving from others do not get to decide. Beggars can't be choosers.
That's it.
If I'm paying into a system that goes to helping you because you're on hard times, you don't get to vote how my money is taken from me.
That's it.
I vote how my money goes to you.
I get behind that.
And then guess what happens? It's a fluctuating system. If all of the people who are making money and paying taxes say, I am tired of paying taxes, we are hereby going to shut off the valve, then all of a sudden those poor people stop receiving those benefits and are now eligible to vote. You see how it works? Because if
So it has a safety net. It's a two
it can't
clause.
go too far in one direction.
I like it.
The moment you cut everybody off is the moment they say, now we're voting because we're net zero or slightly net positive.
So it's May the 8th, and we just solved that problem, and that's a big problem. So there you go.
Yeah, the
Mark it
issue
down.
though is powerful people don't want to actually have to deal with it. Ideologues who are too stupid want conflict in the streets.
You're correct.
So
It's a good solution, though.
Thomas Sidebottom says you are trapped in a sealed metal tube with a crazy, agitated man making threats and growing aggressive. Despite 911 calls, you are at least 10 minutes away from even being able to leave the situation. What do you do? Exactly. Yep.
Well, I mean,
Joking.
criminals are never expected to behave, but everyone else who has to suffer through their bad behavior needs to keep a perfectly cool head at all times.
It's the old, why don't we pass a law and make that illegal?
Yeah.
It's like, well, they already broke the law. They're doing something crazy and dangerous.
Exactly.
What makes you think they're going to follow your second law?
Yeah.
It doesn't follow.
All right. No Name says, Kyle, I was there with you at Lafayette Square after they tried burning down the church. Still have a paint-stained uniform hanging in my closet from that first night. Those are some memorable nights at the White House. You the man. The 529 insurrection, it's called. That's right. Never forget 529. When far-left extremists tore down the barricades in front of the White House, tried storming it, set fire to a guard post and the church, forced the president into an emergency bunker. It was a day that the left tried to destroy democracy. Never in our country's history have we been so close to having our democracy completely destroyed.
Almost happened. They almost hit the secret button. The other closest one was when you put the guy with the Viking hat into the secret chair. If you get him into the chair wearing the helmet,
he
He's
stood
in
in front
control.
of it.
He
then he
controls
takes
the
over the
country.
government. Yeah,
That's
it's
how it
just
works.
we surrender
Yeah.
all of it. It's the secret ink on the back of the Constitution. I think that's what it says.
It says if
I don't
you're
have that
wearing a
copy.
Viking, and this is why they were so scared of him.
Correct.
Because the Constitution, written on the back in pencil, it says if you wear a Viking hat and sit in this chair, you become king of America.
There are requirements for the length of the horns, and I'm not confident that his were that based on the angle I saw on CNN. But it's possible that he could have almost taken it.
Still, it was a close call.
Very close.
Narrowly
You
avoided
want to
that
hear
one.
something crazy? I sold my house in Virginia a couple years back, 21, I think. And the kid who came, and he was a kid, he was young, who came and inspected my roof, which was also frustrating because he didn't have his own ladder. I found that very off-putting. I'm like, I have to bring my own ladder to do the roof thing. And he was telling me, he was like, oh yeah, man. I said something about how I was there at Lafayette Square the day that they ran over the barricades. And he was like, yeah, I spent the night in one of those big chalice sculptures. There's like all these like big kind of like fountain things. And he was in one of them and he hid because the cops were around.
Wow.
And he hid there all night. And I was like, oh, you're a piece of garbage. Like somebody should have arrested you. And I was a federal agent at the time. And I knew that they wouldn't back me if I tried to go like, well, we should probably detain you and have some questions. It was like, I guess you're just going to continue with my roof. So I watched that. I was like, I cannot wait to get out of this area. This like that space near DC. It's so toxic. And there's no will to do anything, even when it's right. It's gross.
Kofifi Queen says, cast brew request, Broody Mama blend. Half calf for broody mamas that want great coffee, but also to spare their little from too much caffeine. Broody Mama. I don't know. I mean, should a pregnant woman have caffeine at all?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. My she's drinking coffee.
Oh, yeah?
It's you know what they're not supposed to do is alcohol. That turns out to be the case. But we did have a lady sit with us one time. She was on her third glass of wine, telling us about how she was pregnant, and we're kind of looking at her like, "This is a problem." We figured this out in the 70s and 80s. You're not supposed to do that. And she goes, "It's fine. You know, my OB knows." And I'm like, "Knowing and condoning are very different." You have a weird doctor that says, "Oh yeah, I know you drink wine. I guess you're just gonna risk it." Yeah, caffeine's not so bad. It's moderation, like everything else.
Winston Alexander says, my New Jersey CCW is pending. Told if I shoot a person greater than 15 yards, will be prosecuted. Have duty to retreat out of home. 4 friends, non-family, or LEO to vouch for me. Only can carry handgun listed on CCW. Police chief interview is Wednesday. Wish me luck. It's just not even worth it, man.
That sucks.
Yeah, the cops told me, flee from your house. And I was like, I am on there's only way out is the back. And it's a 20-foot drop or whatever. And they were like, then you will tell a judge you thought it was more appropriate to kill a man than it was to slide down, the banister or whatever, or the railing. And they're going to argue that means murder. That means you intended to kill the person because there was an alternative. And I'm like, I jump off 30 feet and break my legs. Nope, doesn't matter.
Crazy.
Yep.
Not America.
I think it was like 16, 17 feet, the back balcony in the back of my house.
Oh, I have no doubt.
We were built on a hill.
Yeah.
So it's like you walk in the front door, but then if you keep walking straight, all of a sudden you're 7 feet up. And then the elevated garage was like 17. It was crazy. And that I'm like, it's just nuts. So I'm like, we got to leave this place. Can't be here.
Correct answer. Living by your own advice, even.
I mean, but this is years ago too.
But still, you know that's not
Yeah.
a sustainable situation.
Like, I'm not going to tell people to do a thing that I didn't do, but people say like, oh, I have families. It's too difficult. I can't quit my job. And it's just like, I get it. I know it's hard. I'm not telling you it's easy. I'm saying one day they're going to come to your house. They're going to smash the windows and they're going to storm in because you're going to be a sympathizer or something. And then you're going to say to yourself, it would have been less difficult to walk barefoot with my kids than to try and break my kids out of a gulag. You know what I mean? Like, I'm giving the most ridiculous and extreme example. That's my point.
Yeah.
If it comes to that point, if the riots come to your neighborhood, the question is it harder to escape with rioters smashing windows and firebombing buildings, or is it easier to just get in your car right now and have nothing? Either way, you have nothing. In one circumstance, there's violence. In one circumstance, there isn't. JTTV says, hey, Shimmy, I heard through the grapevine you have a classic car. Won't disclose which type or year, but my dentist knowing you was a shock. I know why Tim visits Savannah now.
It's not for my old classic car, but yeah, I know who he's referring to. Friend of mine, awesome
Who is he?
guy. Just a friend of mine from.
I've been to Savannah
from
one
church.
time.
Yeah.
I went on a ghost tour or something like that.
Yeah, no, I actually wasn't there with Tim when he went.
No,
Yeah.
we went to that museum on the boardwalk where they have the serial killer stuff. That was
Yeah,
really
a few years ago, my car died, and then I wanted to buy something new, and there was a super old car that needed like a little bit of work on it, so I just bought that, and then that's
You're not disclosing it at all.
No, absolutely, no one can know. It's genuinely. I mean, I love it. It's not that cool of a car. I'll just let him call it classic because the audience might be like, wow,
Anything over
it's
25
super
years.
Cool. It is technically classic. Yeah,
Yep,
over
that's a
25 years
classic.
old is a classic.
I think 50 is an antique.
Yeah, it was my daily driver.
All right, our favorite super chatter, the real Hydro PX says, Tim, I promise you everybody will move if you find them a new job, a new home, and set them up to move. Stop riding that high horse. Listen to this communist over here.
That's weak.
Someone else should give me things. If you give me a thing, I'll take responsibility, but only because you did first, dude. The responsibility is all yours. If you want to stay in New York City, you don't want to leave your job, I got no beef. I'm saying just don't knock on my door and be like, help, help. It's finally happening. I'll be like, come on, man. You know what I mean? Like, come on. What do you want me to do about it?
Predictable.
Yeah, it's like, you do you. I'm not anybody's king. I'm also not going to give people money in a house or like, yeah, well, that's your responsibility. I left Chicago. I left New York well in advance and then said, here's why I did it and here's why I think you should too. And if your response is, it's really difficult, I can't do it, I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm just saying what I think you should do. So if bad stuff happens, well, then, there you go. Bad things will happen. Jay Stewart says, SCOTUS has ruled school searches are legal because loco parent. Now, I'm just saying, if I was in high school and a teacher walked up to me and said, give me your phone, I would be like, no. And if they try to physically take it from me, then I would physically resist.
There's got to be a limit too, though. School searches are legal within certain parameters. They may be able to search backpacks, but I guarantee you there's a higher degree of privacy that's required on your phone because of the type of information that's there. There's always things can be legal and still have limits, and there's got to be some limits there.
We Are Change says, Shameless drives a Honda Accord.
It's a classic.
So
Honda
yeah,
Accord.
when I was in community college, I bought a 1989 Honda Accord hatchback. I loved that little thing.
really?
It's long gone. That was great. It was great.
But aren't Honda Accords a step up from Civics? So they're
Well,
kind of nicer.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
What package? What trim
it was
package?
it was
like an
I think it was
LX.
LX. Yeah. It had the
That's, pretty
hatchback
good,
then.
huh?
I love that little thing. It was 2013,
See,
so it
this
was
was
already a very
it
old
was an
car back
89?
then. Yeah.
I
That
had
thing
an-
was fun.
I had an 88 little Acura, which was almost the exact same thing. It was
Yeah.
a 6-cylinder and it was a 5-speed. It was super fun. It was a box.
Yes. So
But it was, it was a 3-liter engine. You could do fun stuff with it, and you could rev it, and double clutch and do all the dumb things like a race car. But it looked like, it looked like what a mom would be driving.
It felt like a little go-kart. It felt like a little go-kart that was fashioned up to look like an actual car.
Yeah.
It was super loud even when you were doing 40. It felt like you're going way faster than you were.
Yeah, and
Dude,
everything would shake.
Yes, I loved that thing, man. I
good.
loved that little thing. Pop-up headlamps.
I will say on the moving thing, what really bothered me about the left in Occupy was before I got any attention for my work, they were like, oh man, this is the perfect example of what's wrong with the system. See, you're like a mixed race high school dropout dude. You're really smart and you're hardworking. Where's your success? Where's you lift? They keep saying pick yourself up by your bootstraps, but clearly it's not working because the system's broken. Oops. And then a month later, they're like, he's a white kid who was born with a silver spoon. He's a trust fund kid. He was given everything he's ever wanted. And so here I am, like, I left Chicago because of stagnation and crime with a couple $100 cash in my pocket, and I was prepared to be homeless and live in the streets. And that story's ignored. And then later I'm like, I left New Jersey, and like, well, you're rich. It was easy for you. It's like, oh, oof. I'm like, okay, whatever, man. Like, do whatever you want to do. Lowside Goon says, hey, Tim, my dog Coco passed away early this morning. She was 14 years old. Can you speak on the emotions I'm feeling right now? I remember you discussing it in a previous show. Yes. So the way I describe it is when your dog dies, when a pet dies, you're very, very sad. But that sadness is actually happiness. It is all of the joy and happiness that you were given by that loyal friend for a decade plus being released in an instant. And I don't actually, when my dog died, when he was old and I was crying, I wouldn't consider it pain, what I was feeling. I was crying just like horrendously, but it felt good. I don't know how to describe it. It felt good. I'm remembering exactly why I was feeling this way was a positive feeling because life passes on. Life is not. I think lobsters are immortal. You can have a lobster for a long time, but for the rest of us, we get a certain amount of time. Yeah,
biologically immortal. Yeah.
They'll so get a lobster for a pet, and you'll have a great time. Yeah. But we know dogs are going to pass, and we get a small amount of time to experience all of that happiness, and then one day it's like a bomb of emotion goes off, and all of that is released at once. So. That's how I describe it. I think it's a good thing. That pain you're feeling speaks to how powerfully happy you've been made. And another way I kind of put it is you're paying back your dues. You were given all of that joy and happiness, and now you're repaying it in a very quick moment. It's balance of the universe, man. But it's always a net positive. I always think back, and it's just good memories. It was totally worth it. And the question I have for people when they say, like, they're hurting is, would you exchange the 14 years you had with your dog so that you were not crying right now?
That's it.
Of course not. Never. And then it's like, the crying is a good thing. It's like, it's life. That's how I feel about humans too. Everybody wants to be younger. Nobody wants to grow old and die. And I'm kind of like, we are humans. We grow old. We die. I'm not going to cry about it.
It's part of the bargain.
It's like, I will literally cry about it, but I'm not going to like, life is unjust, and like flip over a table or anything. I'm going to be like, we have reached this point.
There's something about people who've gotten so far away from biological death as part of the cycle. Like, people are so removed from it, they don't know where their food comes from, that something has to die for them to be able to eat, that they don't understand that that's something that this used to be part of everyday life for every person until 5 seconds ago. The last 100 years.
Being angry at reality for reality is so detrimental to any ability to enjoy your life. If you're mad because you're subjected to a reality that you don't get to control and that you're going to end and all of the things that we as humans have to, manage to cope with and stuff, if that turns you bitter and angry, you're going to have a miserable life.
Yeah.
You have to worry about the things you can control, and the things you can't control, you have to do your best to let go. And mortality happens to be one of those things you can't control. So.
Yeah, it's a fact of life. And although many people try to, they try to reduce that. And there are actually like a lot of industries that try to, there's not a lot of people that understand that grief is part of the cycle. Our culture has tried to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Have you noticed? I mean, that is a big piece of almost all cultures, especially ones that have old, roots going back. That grief is part of the experience, even for very young people.
This is getting the Industrial Revolution has consequences.
I'm down for that.
Ted. Oh, boy.
Look, you can start reading Ted Kaczynski's, what do you call it? His manifesto, and you'll be like, I actually saw someone... Man, it's troubling when you go like, Ted Kaczynski was a bad dude. Because I remember when he got wrapped up and you go, thank God, they got the bomber. And then you start reading it and you're like, oh, that guy was a prophet. He just didn't really execute his ideas very well.
He just had a terrible idea about what the post office is for.
Listen,
completely wrong.
You can have fantastic, my dad used to say this, good idea, bad execution.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly it. He was saying the right thing. He took the wrong route on how to deliver that message. And
that's right.
Delivering it in a bomb is always the wrong answer.
Delivering it via the USPS is bad.
Which is why it's funny with the whole like Texas shooter thing. I'm like, the milquetoast show where we repeatedly tell everybody violence solves nothing and is not the tactic for winning political victories. And then they try to imply that we in some way would ever encourage anybody to do anything close to that. Stupidest thing ever.
It's ridiculous. But again, not to beat a dead horse, but it literally is just projection because they were doing all that stuff about the trans day of rage, blah, 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 all that stuff before then.
You can look at all of them.
Yeah. And then the trans person goes and actually commits a heinous act and they're like, oh, blame everything except for the trans person and the people that were firing up trans people as much as they possibly could, telling them there's a genocide going on but the stochastic terrorists are Tim Pool because a neo-Nazi watched his show once.
Maybe a neo-Nazi,
Ridiculous.
probably not. And more importantly, as you mentioned a second ago too, about what happened in May in 2020, right? And when they go into I think it was it May?
529.
529 was the day when they actually did the
White House, St. John's Church.
So all that looks like a seditious conspiracy to incite a rebellion or an insurrection to me.
Absolutely.
Like that is
but
what projection
Republicans
looks like.
right now should be filing those charges, and they're not doing it.
Well, they don't control DOJ because DOJ is.
They could be
the hand
filing
in the glove.
subpoenas, and they could be doing the 529 commission, but
Yes.
they don't do it.
I'm for that. I'm for the 529 commission. Make that trend.
Well, I mean, the majority of the public is too, actually. Maybe not 529 specifically, but according to data, more of the public wanted the 2020 riots looked into than wanted January 6th investigated.
I did a kind of a thought experiment the other day because somebody brought up the Charlottesville, the Unite the Right rally. And how much was that the dry run for what they pulled off for the January 6th story? The messaging there was so overwhelmingly ridiculous and it was so one-sided when the reporting that you ended up doing the exact same thing, but they did it better with January 6th. I feel like they actually honed their game. 5 years later, they executed even a better version of that.
They had way more substance with the Charlottesville because there was actual...
There were actual neo-Nazis
Nazis
there.
there,
Not
whereas-
many, by the way. There were probably all the neo-Nazis that are on the Eastern Seaboard were in that one place.
Compared to the number of neo-Nazis that were actually at January
Correct.
6th,
100%.
there's a lot more. And it was arguably you could say that Unite the Right was a right-wing, radical event or whatever. But the January 6th riot, that was not a far right radical event. There's way too many people there for it to be truly actually far right and radical.
I just love that. I just want to mention one more thing about Charlottesville. That is what Joe Biden claimed his motivation for running for office was. He said, I ran for president because I saw Charlottesville. Like, shut up. That is not why you decided to run for president.
I want to talk about the Jake Shields fight challenge with Mac Beggs. So Jake Shields, MMA fighter, Mac Beggs, trans wrestler, biologically female, 5'2", Jake Shields, 6'0". So we're going to talk about that in the members only uncensored show, which will be live on the front page of Timcast.com in about 12 minutes. So become a member by going to Timcast.com, clicking join us, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL, basically everywhere. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Kyle, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah, you can follow me at Kyle Seraphin on Twitter, on True Social. You can go to kyleseraphin.com. You can see the show that we do where we share government whistleblower stories, which I think hopefully turns the tide a little bit.
Right on.
My name's Seamus Coughlin. What I want to shout out right now is the St. Joseph's Novena that we're praying for the working class in this country in this time of economic uncertainty, for the unborn, and also for our enemies like the people at Voxville and Mulvaney, those we disagree with, and that America will return to God. So if you guys want to go over to my Twitter account, it's one of my most recent tweets, has a link to this EWTN Novena, and I believe we're on day 7 right now, so getting close to wrapping up.
I am Phil Labonte, Phil That Remains on Twitter, Phil That Remains Official on Instagram. The band is All That Remains. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Music, and all of your YouTube links there.
And I am Serge.com. If you want to chat with me, I'll be in the comments tonight. I'll start doing that again. And you can find me on Twitter at Serge.com. Spell it out.
We have a new documentary, 2 of them, that are coming out very soon. We've got Infringed, which is Lauren Southern's documentary on gun control, and then we have another one on the Federal Reserve and the banking system. You'll notice at timcast.com there's a new documentaries section. We're going to be regularly producing them, maybe a couple every few months. Hopefully we can crank out just tons of awesome, full-length documentaries. We may not be able to release Infringed tomorrow because we're having our lawyer go through the standard usage stuff and giving us notes, so it may take a little longer than we thought, but probably within the next few days, maybe a week. Check that out. Become a member at timcast.com, and we'll see you all in the Uncensored show in just a few minutes.